The carriage door slammed open. Elena Whitlock stood in the freezing rain, staring at the stone fortress that would either save her or bury her. Behind her, nothing. A father's disgrace, creditors circling like vultures, whispers that followed her through London's streets. Ahead, Duke Adrian Blackmore, a man whose name made servants cross themselves. He needed someone desperate enough to teach his daughter. She needed someone powerful enough to shelter her from ruin. But desperation has teeth, and pride cuts deeper than cold. This wasn't rescue. This was war dressed as employment, and neither of them knew how to surrender. Stay with me until the end. Hit like and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. The wheels had stopped turning an hour ago, but Elena couldn't make herself move. She sat in the hired carriage, third class, barely heated, smelling of wet wool and someone else's poverty, and watched rain hammer against the window. Beyond the glass, Blackmore Hall rose like a judge's verdict. Gray stone, iron gates, windows that caught no light even when lightning split the sky. Her hands were shaking. She hated that, hated the tremor in her fingers as she gripped the worn handle of her only remaining bag. Everything else had been sold. The dresses, the books, the jewelry her mother had left her, all of it gone to pay debts that weren't even hers, but they became hers the moment her father put a pistol in his mouth. Elena closed her eyes, pushed the image away. She'd gotten good at that over the past 6 weeks, good at not thinking about the blood on the study carpet, the creditors who'd stripped the house bare within days, the so-called friends who'd turned their backs the second the scandal broke. Charles Whitlock, gentleman, investor, liar. Dead by his own hand after a scheme collapsed and took a dozen families down with him. The newspapers had been vicious, the society pages worse, and Elena, his only child, became the ghost everyone pretended not to see. "Miss?" The driver's voice cut through the drumming rain. "You getting out or not? I got other fares waiting." No, he didn't, but she couldn't blame him for wanting to leave this place. Elena gathered what remained of her dignity, wrapped her threadbare cloak tighter, and stepped into the storm. The rain hit her like punishment, cold, relentless, soaking through fabric that had once been fine, but now showed its age in frayed hems and patched elbows. She grabbed her bag, paid the driver with the last coin she had, and watched him disappear down the long drive without a backward glance. She was alone. The gate stood open, black iron curled into shapes that might have been flowers or thorns, she couldn't tell, and beyond them, the gravel path stretched toward the house like a challenge. Elena walked. Each step crunched too loud in the silence between thunder. The estate grounds spread out on either side, manicured within an inch of their lives. Not a weed, not a wildflower, just controlled, deliberate order. Even the trees looked like they'd been told to grow in straight lines. The house loomed larger as she approached. 3 stories of stone and sharp angles, built to intimidate rather than welcome. Gargoyles crouched along the roofline. The windows were tall, narrow, dark. Somewhere inside, a child lived. A child who'd lost her mother and gained a father made of ice. And somewhere inside, the Duke waited. Elena had heard the stories. Everyone had. Adrian Blackmore, 9th Duke of Thornfield, a man who'd inherited young and ruled his estates with the warmth of a winter grave. His wife had died 3 years ago, childbirth complications, they said, though rumors whispered darker things. He'd shut himself away after that, refused social invitations, let his daughter be raised by a rotation of nursemaids and governesses who never lasted more than a few months. The advertisement had been brief. Wanted. Governess for girl age 6. Strict discipline required. Sentiment discouraged. References essential. Elena had no references. She had nothing but desperation and a letter she'd written in her best hand, lying about qualifications she didn't have. She'd expected rejection. Instead, she'd received a summons. The front door was oak, reinforced with iron bands, and crowned with a knocker shaped like a lion's head. Elena lifted it, let it fall. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Nothing. She waited, rain streaming down her face, soaking into her hair, counted to 30, raised the knocker again. The door swung inward. A woman stood there. 50, maybe older, dressed in black with a housekeeper's ring of keys at her waist. Her face was carved from the same stone as the house. "You're late," the woman said. Not a question. The roads were flooded. The driver had to take the long route. Elena kept her voice steady. I'm Elena Whitlock. The Duke is expecting me. The housekeeper's eyes traveled over her, the soaked cloak, the cheap bag, the mud on her boots, and found her wanting. You're the governess? I'm here for the position, yes. A long pause. Then the woman stepped aside. Wipe your feet. The Duke doesn't tolerate mess. Elena stepped into an entrance hall that felt like a cathedral built for sorrow. Black and white marble floor, polished to a mirror shine. A staircase that curved upward into shadow. Portraits lining the walls, generations of Blackmores staring down with identical expressions of cold judgment. The housekeeper shut the door. The sound of rain cut off instantly, replaced by a silence so thick Elena could hear her own heartbeat. Mrs. Hartwell, the woman said, as if the name was a title. I run this house. You'll answer to me on domestic matters. You'll answer to His Grace on everything else. Understood. The previous governess left 2 weeks ago. The one before that lasted a month. The one before that, 3 days. Mrs. Hartwell's expression didn't change. The Duke's expectations are exacting. The child is difficult. Elena had expected this too. Damaged children often were. What's her name? Miss Lily. You'll address her as such. No familiarity, no coddling. The Duke was very clear. May I meet her? After you meet His Grace. Mrs. Hartwell turned, keys jangling. Follow me, and don't touch anything. They walked through corridors that seemed designed to make people feel small. High ceilings, dark wood paneling, more portraits, furniture that looked expensive and uncomfortable, everything perfect, everything cold. The house breathed wealth, but it felt like a mausoleum. Each room they passed was immaculate, fresh flowers in vases, crystal gleaming on sideboards, rugs without a thread out of place. But there was no life in any of it. No books left open on tables, no shawls draped over chairs, no sign that actual people lived here instead of ghosts going through the motions. Elena's wet boots squeaked on the marble. Mrs. Hartwell didn't acknowledge the sound, just kept walking with mechanical precision, her back ramrod straight, her keys providing the only rhythm to the silence. They passed a drawing room where sheets covered the furniture, a music room with a pianoforte that looked untouched, its lid closed, a thin layer of dust visible even from the doorway. A dining room with a table that could seat 20, but was set for one at the far end. Does the Duke dine alone? Elena asked before she could stop herself. Mrs. Hartwell's pace didn't slow. Always. And Lily? In the nursery, at the appropriate times. Of course, heaven forbid a father eat dinner with his 6-year-old daughter. They climbed a smaller staircase, servants' access probably, and emerged into another corridor. This one was narrower, the ceiling lower, but still oppressively clean. Gas lamps flickered in sconces along the walls, casting shadows that moved like living things. Mrs. Hartwell stopped at a set of double doors, knocked twice, and entered without waiting for an answer. The study was the same as everything else, beautiful and hostile. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves lined 3 walls, filled with leather-bound volumes organized by height and color. A massive desk dominated the center, positioned to catch the gray light from tall windows that overlooked the gardens. A fire burned in the hearth, but it gave off heat without comfort, like everything else in this house. And behind the desk, the Duke? Adrian Blackmore didn't stand when they entered, didn't acknowledge them at all for a long moment. He sat reading a document, one hand resting on the desk, the other holding a pen he occasionally used to mark notes in margins. Elena took the opportunity to study him. 32, the rumors said. He looked older. Not in years. His face was still sharp, handsome in a way that made you think of blades, but in the weight he carried. Dark hair, strictly trimmed, strong jaw, clean-shaven, eyes the color of smoke, focused entirely on the page in front of him. He wore black, head to toe. Not mourning clothes exactly, too well cut, too deliberate for that, but the message was the same. This is a man who buried something and refuses to dig it up. His hands were what caught her attention. Long fingers, no rings, but there was ink on his right thumb and a small scar across his knuckles. The hands of someone who worked, not just commanded. It surprised her, though she couldn't say why. Finally, he set the pen down, looked up, met her eyes. Elena felt the impact like cold water. Miss Whitlock. His voice matched the rest of him, controlled, precise, devoid of warmth. "You're late. The roads are your concern, not mine. Punctuality is not negotiable in this household." She bit back the first response that came to mind, kept her face neutral. "It won't happen again." "No, it won't." He leaned back in his chair, fingers steepled. "Mrs. Hartwell tells me you have no formal references." "I explained that in my letter. My previous employer died recently. His affairs are unsettled." A lie, but close enough to the truth that she could sell it. The Duke's expression didn't change. "Your father was Charles Whitlock." Her stomach dropped. "Yes. The man who defrauded half of London's investment circles and then took the coward's way out." The words hit like fists. Elena's nails dug into her palms. "My father's choices are not mine. His debts are. Which is why I'm here." She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I need this position. I'll work hard. I'll follow your rules. I won't disappoint you." "Everyone disappoints me, Miss Whitlock. The question is how quickly." He picked up another document. Her letter, she realized. "You claim proficiency in French, Italian, mathematics, literature, and piano. Impressive for someone who's never been employed as a governess. I was well educated before circumstances changed." "By whom?" "Private tutors." My mother insisted. "Your mother?" His eyes flickered with something she couldn't read. "Dead, I assume?" 10 years ago. Convenient." The word stung more than it should have. Elena straightened her spine. "If you've already decided I'm unsuitable, Your Grace, then we're wasting each other's time." Silence stretched between them like a physical thing. Mrs. Hartwell had gone very still beside her. Elena could feel the woman's disapproval radiating like heat. Then, impossibly, something shifted in the Duke's expression. Not warmth, not even interest, but recognition maybe. The acknowledgement of someone who wouldn't fold at the first sign of pressure. He stood, and Elena realized he was taller than she'd thought. At least 6 feet, broad-shouldered, moving with the kind of controlled grace that suggested he'd been trained in more than just estate management. There was something military in his bearing, something that spoke of discipline beaten into muscle and bone until it became nature. "My daughter," he said, walking to the window, hands clasped behind his back, "is not an easy child. She's willful, prone to tantrums. She refuses to eat properly, sleep properly, or behave with any semblance of discipline. The previous governess called her unmanageable. The one before that called her disturbed." Elena kept her voice level. "What would you call her?" "Mine." The single word carried weight. He didn't turn from the window. "She's my responsibility, my burden, and I will not have her raised to be weak." "Weak?" "Emotional, dependent, fragile." He said the words like curses. "The world is not kind to fragile women, Miss Whitlock. You should know that better than most." The barb landed clean. Elena felt heat rise in her chest, anger, humiliation, something sharper than both. "And your solution is to make her hard. My solution is to make her strong. There's a difference." "Is there?" The Duke turned then, and the look he gave her could have frozen fire. "You're questioning me? I'm trying to understand what you want from me. I want you to teach her. Languages, mathematics, history, music. I want you to impose structure, routine, discipline. I want you to eliminate the hysterics, the crying, the constant need for attention and comfort." He crossed back to his desk, leaned against it, arms folded. "I want you to help me save her from becoming the kind of woman who breaks when the world turns cruel." Elena heard the words he didn't say, like her mother. "How old is Lily?" 6. 6 years old. A baby, really. A baby who'd lost her mother and been left with a father who'd decided emotion was the enemy. Elena thought of that child upstairs somewhere in this cold house, probably terrified, probably desperate for warmth and finding only rules and silence. "I'll do it," she heard herself say. "But I have conditions." The Duke's eyebrows rose. "You're negotiating?" "I'm clarifying." She met his stare and didn't blink. "I'll teach her everything you've asked. I'll maintain discipline and structure, but I won't be cruel. I won't ignore her when she's frightened or hurt, and I won't pretend that feelings don't exist just because they're inconvenient." Miss Whitlock, you said the world is cruel to fragile women. You're right, but it's also cruel to women who don't know how to feel anything at all. Elena's voice shook slightly, but she pushed through. If you want her strong, truly strong, she needs more than just rules. She needs to know that strength doesn't mean being alone. The silence that followed was arctic. The Duke stared at her with an expression that could have been fury or something else entirely. Mrs. Hartwell had gone rigid beside her, probably already planning Elena's dismissal. A log shifted in the fireplace. The clock on the mantel ticked. Outside, rain started again, softer this time, a whisper against glass. Then the Duke spoke. You'll have 3 months. If Lily shows improvement, you stay. If not, you leave. Without references. Without pay for the final month. Am I clear? It was a trap. A no-win situation designed to keep her desperate and compliant. Elena nodded anyway. Crystal. Mrs. Hartwell will show you to your quarters. You start tomorrow morning, 6 o'clock. Don't be late. He picked up his pen, returned to his document. And Miss Whitlock? Yes, Your Grace? If I find you've been filling my daughter's head with romantic nonsense about feelings and kindness conquering all, you'll be gone before lunch. Understood? Perfectly. He didn't look up again. Just like that, she'd ceased to exist. Elena followed Mrs. Hartwell out of the study, down more corridors, up a narrow servant's staircase to the 3rd floor. Her legs felt weak. Her hands were still shaking, but now from anger as much as fear. The room they gave her was exactly what she'd expected. Small, clean, impersonal. A narrow bed with a thin mattress and thinner blanket. A dresser with 3 drawers. A small desk beneath a window that looked out over the gardens, or what she assumed were gardens. In the fading light and rain, they looked like carefully arranged graves. Meals are at set times, Mrs. Hartwell said, standing in the doorway like a sentinel. 6 in the morning, noon, and 6 in the evening. You'll eat in the servants' hall. The child's routine is posted here. She handed Elena a typed schedule. Deviation is not permitted. His Grace will inspect her progress weekly, every Sunday at 4 o'clock. You'll present her accomplishments, demonstrate her improvement, and answer any questions he has. Questions about what? Her behavior, her learning, whether she's crying less, whether she's becoming more manageable. Mrs. Hartwell's face was unreadable. The Duke expects results, Miss Whitlock, not excuses. I understand. Do you? The housekeeper stepped closer, and Elena caught the scent of lavender and starch. The last governess who stood up to His Grace the way you just did was dismissed within 3 days. The one before that tried to coddle the child, told her bedtime stories, let her play instead of study. Gone in a week. The Duke doesn't want a mother for that girl. Her mother is dead. He wants a teacher, someone who can turn a wild thing into something presentable. Can you do that? Elena looked at the schedule in her hands. 6 in the morning until 8 at night. Every moment accounted for. French, mathematics, piano, history, literature, penmanship, geography, music theory, 15-minute breaks, 20 minutes for meals. No playtime, no walks, no room for a child to just be a child. I can try, she said finally. Mrs. Hartwell's expression softened, barely, just for a second. Then you're braver than most, or more desperate. Either way, you'll need it. She turned to leave, then paused. A word of advice, Miss Whitlock. The Duke doesn't like disruption. The household runs on order, everything in its place, everyone knowing their role. You try to change that. You try to fix what's broken here, and you'll find yourself on the street faster than you can blink. Know your place. Do your job. And don't imagine you're here to save anyone. Not the child, and certainly not him. She left before Elena could respond. Elena sat on the bed, hard mattress, scratchy blanket, and looked at the schedule again. It was brutal. Inhumane, really. The kind of routine you'd impose on a soldier, not a 6-year-old girl. But what choice did she have? She thought about London, about the boarding house where she'd spent the last 6 weeks, sleeping in a room the size of a closet, eating bread and watered-down soup, watching her coins dwindle to nothing. About the women there, seamstresses, laundresses, factory workers, who looked at her with pity or suspicion, knowing she was different, knowing she'd fallen from somewhere higher and would probably fall further still. She thought about the men who'd come calling after her father's death, friends of his who'd offered to help her, their eyes traveling over her body like she was property to be assessed and purchased. The landlord who'd suggested alternative payment arrangements. The shopkeeper who'd told her he could extend credit if she was willing to be flexible. No. This house was cold, and the Duke was colder, but at least here she had a door that locked, a bed of her own, work that didn't involve selling pieces of herself. She could survive this. She'd survived worse. Elena unpacked her bag. 3 dresses, all gray or brown, 2 nightgowns, both patched, 1 pair of decent boots, a hairbrush missing half its bristles, a small book, the only one she'd managed to keep, that had been her mother's. Poetry, Keats. The pages were worn soft from reading. She placed it on the desk, the only personal thing in the room. Then she washed her face in the basin of cold water someone had left, changed into her nightgown, and climbed into bed. The rain had stopped. Through the window, she could see stars emerging between clouds. The house creaked around her, settling into night. Somewhere below, servants moved through their final tasks. Somewhere in this vast, cold place, a little girl slept, or didn't sleep, or cried where no one would hear her. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about tomorrow. She slept poorly, dreaming of her father's study, of blood and accusations, of locked doors and children screaming. When she woke, the sky was still dark, but the clock read 5:30. Time to begin. She washed in freezing water, dressed in her least worn dress, gray, practical, high-necked, and pinned her hair back severely. No loose strands, no softness. She looked at herself in the small mirror above the dresser, pale, too thin. Circles under her eyes that made her look older than 23, but her jaw was set and her eyes were clear. She looked like someone who'd survived worse than this. At 5 minutes to 6, Elena made her way down the corridors Mrs. Hartwell had shown her. The house was waking around her. Servants moving quietly through their morning routines, fires being lit in hearths, floors being swept. A maid carrying fresh linens, a footman polishing silver. No one spoke. No one smiled. They just moved through their tasks like parts in a well-oiled machine. Elena found the schoolroom on the 2nd floor, east wing. A corner room with tall windows and morning light that would have been beautiful if everything in it wasn't so carefully sterile. The room was larger than she'd expected. Desks arranged in perfect rows. Though there was only one student, apparently the Duke believed in military precision even for an audience of 1. Books shelved by size and subject, spines aligned, not a single volume out of place. A blackboard, pristine, with fresh chalk in the tray. Musical instruments on stands, a violin, a flute, and what looked like a small harp. Everything polished and waiting. Maps covered one wall. The world, England, Europe. All marked with pins and notes in precise handwriting. A globe sat on a pedestal in one corner. The periodic table hung near the blackboard. Multiplication tables. Latin declensions. French verb conjugations. It looked like a classroom designed by someone who'd never been a child. And in the center of it all, sitting at the front desk with her hands folded and her back straight, was a small girl with empty eyes. Lily Blackmore. She was tiny for 6. Pale skin that looked like it never saw sunlight. Dark hair pulled back in tight braids that looked painful, not a strand out of place. She wore a gray dress that matched Elena's, clearly the Duke's idea of appropriate, with a white collar buttoned to her throat. Her feet didn't touch the floor, but it was her eyes that stopped Elena cold. Gray like her father's, but with something in them that was worse than cold. They were empty, not angry, not sad, not even afraid. Just gone. Like someone had reached inside this child and scooped out everything that made her a person, leaving only a shell that knew how to sit still and wait for instructions. Elena's heart cracked. "Good morning," she said gently, crossing the room slowly. "I'm Miss Whitlock. I'll be your new governess." The girl didn't respond, didn't blink, just stared with those hollow eyes. Elena pulled a chair over and sat at the girl's level, not behind the teacher's desk. "You can call me Miss Elena if you'd like, or just Miss Whitlock. Whatever feels right to you." Nothing. The silence stretched. Elena waited, not pushing, just present. She'd worked with frightened animals before, horses mostly, during her childhood when they'd had stables and grounds and money. You didn't force them. You let them come to you. You showed them you weren't a threat. I know we're supposed to start with French this morning, Elena said quietly, glancing at the schedule posted on the wall. But I was thinking, she leaned in conspiratorially, maybe we could break the rules just a little, just for today, just to get to know each other. What do you think? A flicker. So brief, Elena almost missed it. Something behind the emptiness. Curiosity? Fear? She couldn't tell. What if instead of grammar exercises, you showed me your favorite thing in this room? Just one thing. That's all. Silence stretched. Elena waited, not pushing, just present. Then, so quietly Elena almost didn't hear it, Lily whispered, I don't have a favorite thing. The words hit like stones. But it was something, a crack in the wall, a voice, even if it was telling her there was nothing left inside worth saving. Elena smiled. That's all right. We can find one together. Or maybe... She looked around the room at all the perfect, lifeless objects. Maybe we can make something new, something that could be a favorite. Would you like that? Lily's eyes flickered to the window, then back. Papa says we have to follow the schedule. We will. I promise. But maybe just for this first morning, we could do something a little different, just so I can learn what you like. What makes you happy? I'm not supposed to... The girl stopped, bit her lip. Her hands tightened in her lap. Supposed to what? Be happy. The words came out flat, mechanical, like something repeated so many times it had lost all meaning. Happy is for babies. I'm supposed to be strong. Elena felt something twist in her chest. She wanted to find the Duke in that moment, drag him to this room, and make him look at what his rules had created. A 6-year-old child who thought happiness was weakness. But she kept her voice calm. Who told you that? Everyone. Lily's gaze drifted to the closed door. Papa. Mrs. Hartwell. Miss Grimshaw. She was before, and Miss Peters before that. They all said crying is for babies, and I'm not a baby anymore, so I have to stop. Stop crying? Stop everything. Stop being... She trailed off, and for just a second her lower lip trembled. Then she caught it, pressed her lips into a thin line, forced her face back into that terrible blankness. Elena watched the child fight herself, watched her strangle whatever feeling had tried to surface. It was the saddest thing she'd ever seen. Lily, she said softly, can I tell you a secret? The girl's eyes flicked to her, wary. What secret? I cry sometimes, even though I'm grown up. Even though I'm supposed to be strong too. You do? I do. When I'm sad or scared or just tired of pretending everything's fine when it's not. Elena smiled gently. And you know what? It doesn't make me weak. It just makes me human. Papa says, I know what your papa says, but he's wrong about this one thing. Feeling things doesn't make you weak, Lily. It makes you alive. The girl stared at her, something shifting behind those eyes. Not trust, not yet, but maybe the beginning of hope that someone might understand. Do you... Lily's voice was almost inaudible. Do you miss your papa? The question caught Elena off guard. She thought about lying, about deflecting, but something in the child's face stopped her. Yes, she said honestly, I miss who he used to be, before everything went wrong. Is he dead too? Yes. Did it hurt? Elena swallowed hard. Yes. Lily nodded. Like this made sense. Like pain was the only language she understood. Mama's dead. Papa says I shouldn't talk about her, that it's better to forget. Do you want to forget? I don't know. The girl's hands twisted in her lap. I don't remember much, just pieces. She smelled like roses. She sang songs in Italian. She let me sit on her lap when it thundered. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Is it bad that I remember? No, sweetheart, it's not bad at all. Papa says... The door opened. Both of them jumped. Mrs. Hartwell stood in the doorway, her face carved from disapproval. Miss Whitlock, a word. Elena stood slowly, squeezed Lily's shoulder gently. The child flinched but didn't pull away, and followed the housekeeper into the corridor. Mrs. Hartwell waited until the door closed. What are you doing? Getting to know my student. By encouraging her to disobey the schedule? By building trust, something no one else seems to have tried. The schedule exists for a reason, structure, order. The Duke was very clear. The Duke, Elena interrupted, keeping her voice low but firm, hired me to teach his daughter, not to break her further than she's already broken. Mrs. Hartwell's eyes narrowed. You've been here less than a day, and you think you understand. I understand that child in there is dying inside. I understand that she thinks feeling anything makes her weak. I understand that whatever you've all been doing isn't working, or I wouldn't be here replacing the seventh governess in 2 years. You're arrogant. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Elena met the woman's gaze. I'm not trying to undermine anyone, but I also won't participate in whatever this is. Teaching isn't just information transfer, it's connection. And right now that little girl needs to connect with another human being before she forgets how. Mrs. Hartwell was quiet for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, her expression softened, barely. His Grace loved his wife very much. When she died, something in him died too. He thinks if he can keep Miss Lily from feeling anything, she won't hurt the way he's hurting. It's misguided, but it comes from his own pain. I understand that. But his pain doesn't justify hers. No. The housekeeper sighed. It doesn't. But it's not your job to fix him, Miss Whitlock. Just teach the child, and be careful. The Duke is watching. Always. She left Elena standing in the corridor, heart pounding, wondering what she'd gotten herself into. When Elena returned to the schoolroom, Lily was exactly where she'd left her, hands folded, back straight, empty eyes staring at nothing. Elena took a breath, made a decision. All right, she said. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to follow the schedule, every subject, every time block, exactly as written. Your father will have no complaints about that. Lily nodded. Relieved, probably. Back to familiar ground. But, Elena continued, we're also going to do something else. Something just for us. At the end of each day, after all the lessons are done, we're going to spend 10 minutes doing whatever you want. Drawing, singing, telling stories, anything. It'll be our secret, just between us. Does that sound acceptable? For the first time, something like emotion crossed the child's face. Uncertainty. Fear. But also, just barely, curiosity. 10 minutes? 10 minutes. That's all. And we don't tell Papa. We don't tell anyone. Lily thought about this. Then slowly she nodded. Okay. It was the smallest victory, but it felt like everything. Elena spent the rest of the morning discovering that Lily was brilliant. Despite the emptiness, despite the pain, the child's mind was sharp. She spoke French fluently, her Italian was passable, and her mathematics were advanced for her age. She read at a level far beyond 6 years. She played piano with mechanical precision, but there was no joy in any of it. No spark of curiosity or wonder, just compliance. Do this, do that, repeat, perform. It made Elena's heart ache. During their 15-minute break, Lily sat perfectly still at her desk, hands folded, staring at the wall. Don't you want to move around? Elena asked. Stretch your legs? We're supposed to sit quietly. Says who? The schedule. The schedule says break time. It doesn't say sit still time. Elena stood, walked to the window. Come here. Look. Lily hesitated, then obeyed. She came to stand beside Elena, barely reaching her waist. Outside, the garden sprawled in geometric precision, hedges trimmed into sharp angles, flower beds arranged by color and height, gravel paths leading to a fountain that wasn't running. And beyond that, barely visible through the trees, something that might have been a pond. Do you ever play out there? Elena asked. No. Why not? I'm not allowed. Your father said that? He doesn't have to. I just know. Elena looked down at the small, serious face beside her. When's the last time you did something just because you wanted to? Not because someone told you to or because it was on the schedule? Lily was quiet for a long time. Then, in a voice so small it almost disappeared, I don't remember. Those 3 words contained an entire tragedy. Elena crouched down, bringing herself to the child's level. Lily, I'm going to teach you everything on that schedule. I'm going to make sure your father sees improvement, but I'm also going to teach you something else, something important. What? That it's okay to want things, to feel things, to be more than just perfect and empty. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back violently. I'm not supposed to cry. I know, but sometimes we need to anyway. You'll tell Papa. I won't tell anyone. This is between us. A single tear escaped. Lily wiped it away furiously, her whole body shaking with the effort of holding back the rest. Elena wanted to hug her, wanted to gather this broken child into her arms and tell her everything would be all right. But she knew that would be too much too soon. Trust had to be earned slowly, carefully. So instead, she just stayed there, kneeling, present, waiting. And after a moment, Lily whispered, I miss Mama. I know, sweetheart, I know. The rest of the day passed in careful routine. Literature, lunch, which Lily barely touched, penmanship, geography. Another break where Lily sat rigid at her desk until Elena coaxed her to the window again. Music theory. By 6 o'clock, when the schedule said lessons ended, Elena was exhausted. Teaching itself wasn't hard. Lily absorbed information like a sponge. But the emotional weight of it, the constant awareness that every word might either help or hurt this fragile child, left Elena drained. Time for supper, she said gently. Mrs. Hartwell will bring your tray soon. Lily nodded, started to stand. Wait, Elena said. We had an agreement, remember? 10 minutes of whatever you want. The girl froze. But nothing. We made a deal. So what would you like to do? Lily looked around the room at the instruments, the books, the maps. Then her eyes landed on something in the corner, a box, half hidden behind a globe. What's in there? Elena asked. My old things from before. Lily's voice was barely audible. Papa said they're childish, that I shouldn't play with them anymore. But you want to? A tiny nod. Then let's see what's inside. They crossed to the corner together. Elena lifted the lid. Inside were treasures, a rag doll with button eyes, a set of wooden blocks, a picture book with a cracked spine, ribbons and smooth stones, a tiny tea set, all of it dusty from disuse. Lily reached out, then pulled her hand back. I shouldn't. Why not? Because I'm supposed to be growing up, not playing with baby things. Elena sat down on the floor. Propriety be damned. You're 6 years old, Lily. 6. You're supposed to play with these things. In fact, I'd like to play with them too, if you'll let me. The girl stared at her like she'd spoken a foreign language. Please? Elena picked up the doll. I haven't played make-believe in years. I miss it. Slowly, hesitantly, Lily sank to the floor, reached for one of the smooth stones, turned it over in her small hands. This one's my favorite, she whispered. Mama found it by the pond. She said it was magic. What kind of magic? The kind that makes wishes come true if you believe hard enough. Did you make a wish? Lily's fingers closed around the stone. I wished Mama wouldn't die. Silence filled the room. I'm sorry your wish didn't come true, Elena said softly. Magic isn't real anyway. Papa says only stupid people believe in things that aren't real. I think your papa is wrong about a lot of things. Lily's eyes went wide. You can't say that. I just did. And you know what? It's true. Grown-ups are wrong sometimes, even powerful ones, even dukes. For just a second, the smallest smile ghosted across Lily's face. Then it was gone, but Elena had seen it, proof that somewhere inside, the real child still existed. They spent the next 8 minutes in quiet companionship. Lily arranged her stones in patterns. Elena admired the rag doll. Neither spoke much, but it didn't matter. For those few minutes, in that corner of the cold schoolroom, something warm existed. When Mrs. Hartwell arrived with Lily's supper tray, Elena had already tucked the toys back in their box and helped Lily to her seat. The housekeeper's eyes swept the room, looking for evidence of disorder. Found none. Miss Lily, Miss Whitlock. She set the tray down. Supper, you have 20 minutes. After she left, Lily looked at the food, soup, bread, an apple, and pushed it away. Not hungry? Elena asked. I'm never hungry. When's the last time you ate a full meal? Lily shrugged. I don't remember. Elena looked at the child, thin as a rail, pale as parchment, and made another decision. I'll make you a deal. You eat half of that, and tomorrow during our 10 minutes, we'll do whatever you want. You don't eat, and tomorrow we follow the schedule exactly. No secret time. It was manipulation, gentle blackmail. But sometimes you had to be strategic. Lily considered this, then slowly picked up the spoon. She managed half the soup and most of the bread before her stomach rebelled, but it was more than nothing. Good, Elena said. That's really good, Lily. The girl looked up, surprised. It is? Yes, I'm proud of you. Something shifted in Lily's expression, like she'd forgotten what pride felt like. After supper, Elena walked Lily to her room, 3 doors down from the schoolroom, and watched as a maid helped her prepare for bed. The child's bedroom was as sterile as everything else. A small bed with white linens, a nightstand with a single lamp, a wardrobe. Nothing personal. No toys, no pictures. Just a room that could have belonged to anyone. Good night, Lily, Elena said from the doorway. Good night, Miss Whitlock. Elena started to leave, then turned back. Tomorrow will be better, I promise. How do you know? Because we'll make it better. Together. For the first time all day, Lily's eyes held something other than emptiness. They held hope. Elena made her way back to her room, every muscle aching. In the servants' hall, she ate a quick supper, stew, bread, weak tea, surrounded by staff who didn't acknowledge her. Governesses occupied a strange space, not quite servants, not quite gentry, belonging nowhere. She didn't care. She was too tired to care. In her room, she collapsed onto the bed without even changing clothes. Tomorrow she'd have to do it all again, and the day after. And every day for 3 months, under the Duke's cold scrutiny, trying to help a broken child while navigating a household that ran on fear and silence. But tonight, she'd made progress. Small, fragile, but real. A child had smiled, had played, had eaten, had hoped. It was enough. Elena closed her eyes and let exhaustion take her under, unaware that in his study below, the Duke sat staring at a report from Mrs. Hartwell. The new governess shows promise but bears watching. She follows the schedule but takes liberties. The child responded better today than in months. Recommend continued observation. Adrian read it twice, set it aside, picked up his pen, then put it down again. He walked to the window, looked out at his perfect, controlled estate, and wondered why his chest felt tight. He pushed the feeling away, locked it down, returned to his desk. But for the first time in 3 years, something had shifted in Blackmore Hall, and neither the Duke nor his new governess knew yet what it would cost them both. The first week passed like walking on ice, careful, measured, every step a potential disaster. Elena followed the schedule to the letter. French at 6, mathematics at 7, breakfast at 8:15 with exactly 20 minutes allocated. She drilled Lily on verb conjugations and multiplication tables. She corrected posture and penmanship. She was, by every observable metric, exactly what the Duke had demanded. But in the spaces between, those 10 minutes at the end of each day, those brief moments when Mrs. Hartwell wasn't watching, Elena chipped away at the walls around Lily's heart. The toy box came out more often. The stones got arranged into elaborate patterns. The rag doll acquired a name, Margaret, after Lily's mother. And slowly, painfully slowly, the child began to thaw. A smile here, a laugh there, quickly stifled. Questions that weren't about lessons, but about real things. Why birds sang, whether clouds had feelings, if Elena thought heaven was real. Elena answered honestly. She didn't know. She hoped so. She thought maybe love didn't die just because bodies did. These were dangerous conversations. She knew it, but she couldn't stop herself. By Sunday afternoon, when the Duke's inspection loomed, Elena was a wreck of nerves. She dressed Lily in her finest gray dress, because of course the child owned nothing with color, and braided her hair with ruthless precision. They reviewed everything: French vocabulary, mathematical proofs, the proper way to sit, stand, curtsy. You're going to do wonderfully, Elena said, straightening Lily's collar for the 3rd time. Just remember what we practiced. What if I forget something? Then you take a breath and try again. Your father wants to see effort, not perfection. That was a lie. The Duke absolutely wanted perfection, but Elena couldn't tell a 6-year-old that. At precisely 4 o'clock, they walked to the Duke's study. Elena knocked, waited, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might crack a rib. Enter. The The study looked exactly as it had a week ago. Same fire, same desk, same man carved from ice sitting behind it. Adrian Blackmore looked up from his papers, his gray eyes moving from Elena to his daughter with clinical assessment. Lily, come here. The child walked forward, spine straight, hands clasped. She stopped precisely 3 feet from the desk, the distance Elena had coached her on, and curtsied. Good afternoon, Papa. Sit. She sat in the chair positioned in front of the desk, folded her hands, waited. The Duke studied her for a long moment. You look well. Mrs. Hartwell says you've been eating more. Yes, Papa. Good. We'll begin with French. Recite the conjugation of être in the subjunctive mood. Lily's face went blank. They'd practiced this, but the pressure made everything scatter. Elena watched the child's throat work, panic rising in her eyes. Take your time, the Duke said. Not kindly, just stating a fact. Que je sois, Lily whispered. Que tu sois. Qu'il soit. Que nous soyons. Que vous soyez. Qu'ils soient. Passé. Que j'ai été. Que tu aies été. She made it through. Barely. Her voice shook, but the words were right. The Duke moved to mathematics, then geography, then literature, question after question, delivered with the warmth of an inquisitor. Lily answered them all. She stumbled once, on the capital of Prussia, but caught herself. By the end of 30 minutes, she was trembling with effort, but she hadn't broken. Adequate, the Duke said finally. Improvement from previous weeks. You may go. Lily stood, curtsied again, and walked to the door with mechanical precision. Wait outside, Elena told her gently. I'll be just a moment. The child fled. Elena turned back to find the Duke watching her. She's doing well, she said before he could speak. Better than the report suggested. She's bright, focused, eager to learn. She's terrified. The words hit like a slap. With respect, Your Grace, she's a child being examined by her father. Of course she's nervous. Nervous is one thing. That was barely controlled panic. He leaned back in his chair. What have you been doing with her? Following the schedule, teaching her exactly what you asked. I saw the toy box. Elena's stomach dropped. I'm sorry? In the schoolroom, the corner. It was moved. The dust pattern doesn't match. His eyes were cold. Mrs. Hartwell mentioned you've been taking liberties. Small ones. 10 minutes here. A break extended there. I let it pass because Lily's performance improved, but I won't tolerate deception, Miss Whitlock. I haven't deceived anyone. I followed every rule. Except the one about sentiment. About not coddling her. He stood, walked to the window. I hired you to strengthen her. Not to make her soft. She's not soft. She's human. She's weak. No. The word came out harder than Elena intended. She's grieving. There's a difference. The Duke turned, and the look on his face made her want to step back. But she held her ground. You presume to lecture me about my own daughter? I presume to do the job you hired me for. And part of that job is recognizing that a child who never smiles, never plays, never feels anything but fear isn't strong. She's breaking. You've been here 1 week, and in 1 week I've seen more of her than you have in 3 years. The silence that followed was deadly. Elena knew she'd crossed a line, knew she should apologize, retreat, salvage what she could. But something in her refused to bend. If you want to dismiss me, she said quietly, then do it. But don't pretend it's because I'm failing. I'm the first person who's gotten through to that child since her mother died, and you know it. The Duke stared at her. Something flickered in his eyes, rage maybe, or something deeper. Then his expression shuddered. You'll continue as planned, but no more toys, no more deviations. You follow the schedule exactly, or you leave. Am I clear? Perfectly. Good. You're dismissed. Elena walked out before her legs could give out. Lily was waiting in the corridor, small and pale and shaking. Did I do badly? The child whispered. Is Papa angry? No, sweetheart. You did wonderfully. He's very proud. Another lie. But what else could she say? That night, Elena lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying the conversation. She'd been reckless, stupid. She'd let anger override survival, and now the Duke was watching her every move. She should be more careful. Should follow the rules exactly. Should stop trying to fix things that weren't her responsibility to fix. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw was Lily's empty face, that terrible blankness, and she knew she couldn't do it. She couldn't watch a child die inside and do nothing. The next morning, Elena made a decision. During their 10-minute break, instead of going to the window, she pulled out a piece of paper. "What are you doing?" Lily asked. "Making a list of all the things you want to learn that aren't on your father's schedule." "We're not allowed." "I know, but humor me. If you could learn anything, anything at all, what would it be?" Lily thought about this. Then, hesitantly, "I want to know why flowers grow. Real why. Not just the names of parts." Elena wrote it down. "What else?" "I want to play piano for fun. Not just exercises. Real music, the kind that makes you feel things." "Good. More." "I want—" The girl's voice dropped to a whisper. "I want to go outside, to the gardens, to the pond. I want to see if Mama's magic stone was real." Elena looked at the child, 6 years old, asking for scraps of wonder like they were treasures, and felt something harden in her chest. "Then that's what we'll do." "But Papa said—" "Your Papa said a lot of things. But he also said, I'm your teacher, and I think fresh air is educational, don't you?" Lily's eyes went wide. "You mean it?" "Tomorrow, during our afternoon break, just for 15 minutes. We'll tell Mrs. Hartwell it's a nature study, completely legitimate. She'll tell Papa. Let her." It was reckless, possibly suicidal for her position, but Elena was done watching this child suffocate. The next afternoon, when the schedule called for their 15-minute break, Elena took Lily's hand and led her downstairs. Mrs. Hartwell intercepted them in the corridor. "Where are you going?" "Nature study," Elena said calmly. "Observing seasonal plant changes. Very educational." The housekeeper's eyes narrowed. "His Grace encourages comprehensive education. I'm sure he'd approve of hands-on learning." It was a gamble. They both knew it. Mrs. Hartwell stared at her for a long moment. Then, inexplicably, she stepped aside. 15 minutes. Not a second more. Elena didn't wait for her to change her mind. She walked Lily through the maze of corridors, out a side door, and into the gardens. The cold air hit them like freedom. Lily gasped. Actually gasped, like she'd forgotten what outside felt like. "It's so big," she whispered. The gardens stretched in every direction. Hedges and flower beds and gravel paths, all laid out in geometric precision. But beyond the manicured sections, Elena could see wildness. Trees that hadn't been trimmed, grass that grew uneven, and in the distance, glinting through branches, water. "Come on," Elena said. "Let's find that pond." They half walked, half ran down the path. Lily kept looking back at the house like she expected it to reach out and drag her back inside. But gradually, as they moved farther from those cold stone walls, something changed in her face. Color crept into her cheeks. Her steps got lighter, and when they rounded a bend and found themselves at the pond's edge, she actually smiled, a real smile, full and bright and alive. "It's still here," she breathed. "Mama's pond." It was smaller than Elena had imagined, more of a large pool than a true pond, fed by a stream that burbled over rocks. Willow trees draped around it, their branches trailing in the water. The whole place felt secret, hidden, safe. Lily crouched at the water's edge, running her fingers through the shallows. "Mama used to bring me here every day. We'd look for stones and feed the ducks and make up stories about the fish." "What kind of stories?" "Silly ones. About a fish prince who lived in an underwater castle and granted wishes to children who were kind." She picked up a smooth stone, turned it over. "Do you think it's true?" "I think kindness is always worth trying." Lily looked up at her, and in that moment she looked like a normal 6-year-old, curious, open, unjaded. "Can we come back tomorrow?" "We'll try." "Will Papa be angry?" "Probably." "Are you scared?" Elena considered lying, decided against it. "A little, but some things are worth being scared for." Lily thought about this. Then she stood, threw her arms around Elena's waist, and hugged her tight. Elena froze. It had been so long since anyone had touched her with affection, since anyone had needed her. The feeling was overwhelming. She wrapped her arms around the small, trembling body and held on. "Thank you," Lily whispered, for not being like the others. The others? The ones who left, who didn't care, who just wanted Papa to stop being angry so they could stay safe. The child pulled back, looking up with those two old eyes. You're different. You're not scared of him. Oh, I'm definitely scared of him. But you do things anyway. Yes. Why? Because I see myself in you. Because I know what it's like to lose everything and have no one fight for you. Because you deserve better than this cold, controlled existence. But Elena couldn't say any of that. So instead, because you matter more than my fear. Lily's eyes filled with tears. This time, she didn't fight them. They walked back to the house in comfortable silence, Lily clutching a new magic stone, pale blue with white swirls, like it was made of diamonds. Mrs. Hartwell was waiting at the door. His Grace wants to see you. Now. Elena had expected this. Lily, go to the schoolroom. Start your reading assignment. I'll be there soon. But it's all right. Go. The child went, casting worried looks over her shoulder. Elena followed Mrs. Hartwell to the study, her heart pounding but her resolve steady. The Duke was standing when she entered, not sitting, standing by the window with his back to her, hands clasped behind him, radiating fury. You took her outside. I did. Without permission. I'm her governess. I determined that fresh air and exercise would benefit her education. He turned, and the look on his face could have frozen the sun. You defied a direct order. I did what was best for my student. You have no idea what's best for her. Neither do you. The words exploded out before she could stop them. The Duke went very still. Elena knew she should stop, should apologize, should do anything except what she did next. But she was done being careful. You want to know what I see when I look at your daughter, she said, her voice shaking. I see a child who's forgotten how to be a child, who thinks happiness is weakness and feelings are forbidden, who sits in that schoolroom like a prisoner waiting for execution because she's terrified of disappointing a father who barely looks at her. That's enough. No, it's not. Because you're so busy protecting her from pain that you're killing everything else. Joy, curiosity, wonder, love, all the things that make life worth living. You're trying to turn her into stone, and you're succeeding, and it's destroying her. You don't understand. I understand that you lost your wife. I understand that you're hurting, but your pain doesn't give you the right to steal your daughter's childhood. The Duke crossed the room in 3 strides, stopped a foot away from her. He was taller than her, broader, and in that moment absolutely terrifying. My wife, he said, his voice low and dangerous, died because she was too soft, too emotional, too weak to survive the complications of childbirth. She fell apart when things got difficult, and it killed her. I will not let Lily become that. I will not watch my daughter die because she doesn't know how to be strong. That's not what happened. You weren't there. No. But I know grief when I see it, and what you're doing isn't protecting Lily from pain. It's making sure she never feels anything at all, and that's worse than dying. That's barely living. Silence crashed between them. The Duke stared at her, his jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. His hands had curled into fists. Elena waited for the dismissal, for the fury, for him to throw her out into the cold where she'd come from. Instead, he said, "Get out." Your Grace? Get out before I say something I'll regret. Elena fled. She made it halfway to the schoolroom before her legs gave out. She collapsed against the wall, shaking, adrenaline crashing through her system. She'd done it. She'd actually said all the things she'd been thinking. She'd thrown her survival into the fire for the sake of honesty. And now she'd pay for it. But when she finally made it back to the schoolroom, Lily looked up from her book with such hope in her eyes that Elena couldn't regret it. What happened? Your father and I had a disagreement. About me? About what's best for you. Lily's face fell. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have asked to go outside. Now you'll leave like all the others. I'm not leaving. But Papa can dismiss me if he wants, but until he does, I'm staying, and so are our pond visits. Really? Really? The child threw herself into Elena's arms again, and Elena held her, wondering how many more days they had before everything fell apart. The answer came sooner than expected. That night, Elena was summoned again. Not to the study this time, to the drawing room. The Duke was waiting with Mrs. Hartwell and two other people Elena didn't recognize. A man in clerical dress, a woman with sharp eyes, and a leather portfolio. "Miss Whitlock," the Duke said, "this is Reverend Collins and Mrs. Pembroke. They're here to assess Lily's progress." Elena's stomach dropped. "I wasn't informed. You weren't meant to be. Sit." She sat. Mrs. Pembroke opened her portfolio, pulled out papers. "I've been hired by His Grace to provide an independent evaluation of the child's development, educational progress, emotional stability, suitability for eventual society integration." "I see. I'll be observing lessons tomorrow, conducting private interviews with the child, reviewing your methods." The woman's smile was sharp. "I understand you've been here only 2 weeks, an unusual situation." The Duke required someone immediately. "Indeed. And according to Mrs. Hartwell's reports, you've been taking certain liberties." Elena looked at the housekeeper. The woman's face was unreadable. Betrayal tasted like copper. "I've been adapting my methods to suit my students' needs," Elena said carefully. "By defying the established schedule? By supplementing it with outdoor excursions, unsupervised play, emotional indulgence." Each word was an accusation. Elena met the woman's eyes. "With comprehensive education, physical exercise, age-appropriate development. His Grace hired you to eliminate the child's emotional instability, not encourage it. I was hired to teach her, which includes teaching her how to be a functional human being, not a perfect automaton." Mrs. Pembroke's smile widened. "I see. Well, I'm sure tomorrow's evaluation will be illuminating." The meeting ended shortly after. Elena was dismissed without another word from the Duke. She walked back to her room in a fog of rage and fear. This was it, the trap closing. The Duke had brought in outside observers to document her failures, build a case for dismissal. By this time tomorrow she'd be gone, and Lily would be handed to someone who'd finished the job of killing her spirit. Elena sat on her bed, hands shaking. She should pack, should prepare for the inevitable, should accept that she'd lost. Instead, she pulled out a piece of paper and began to write. It was a lesson plan, but not the kind the Duke wanted. If she only had one more day with Lily, she was going to make it count. The next morning, Elena arrived at the schoolroom early. She pushed the desk to the side, opened the windows, and pulled out every toy from that box in the corner. When Lily arrived at 6 o'clock sharp, she stopped in the doorway, eyes wide. "What's happening?" "We're having a different kind of lesson today." "But the schedule..." "Forget the schedule. Today, I'm teaching you the most important thing you'll ever learn." "What's that?" Elena smiled. "How to be 6 years old." For the next hour they played. They built towers with blocks and knocked them down. They made up stories about the ragdoll's adventures. They sang songs in French and Italian, not from the textbook, but silly ones about animals and weather and nonsense. Lily laughed, actually laughed. Full-throated, joyful, unself-conscious laughter that echoed through the cold house like rebellion. At 7 o'clock, Mrs. Pembroke arrived with her portfolio and her sharp eyes. She stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, the scattered toys, the open windows, the child sitting on the floor with messy hair and flushed cheeks, grinning. "What," she said icily, "is the meaning of this?" Elena stood slowly. "We're learning through play. Research shows that undisciplined children become undisciplined adults. Get up, girl." She pointed at Lily. "Sit at your desk, hands folded, back straight." Lily's smile died. She looked at Elena, terrified. "It's all right," Elena started to say. "No, it's not all right." Mrs. Pembroke crossed the room, grabbed Lily by the arm, and hauled her to the desk. "You will sit, you will be silent, and you will demonstrate what you've actually learned, not this nonsense." Lily started crying. Elena saw red. "Let go of her." "Excuse me?" "I said let go of her. Now." Mrs. Pembroke released Lily's arm but turned on Elena with fury. "You are in no position to give me orders, and you have no right to manhandle a child. Get out of my classroom." "Your classroom?" The woman laughed. "You're a governess, a temporary employee, and from what I've seen, a very poor one. Then make your report and leave, but I won't let you terrorize a 6-year-old to prove a point." They stared at each other. Two women locked in a battle that was about so much more than one morning's lesson. Then Mrs. Pembroke smiled. As you wish. I've seen everything I need to see. She left. Lily was sobbing now, huge gasping sobs that shook her whole body. Elena gathered her up, held her close, and let her cry. I'm sorry, the child kept saying. I'm sorry I laughed. I'm sorry I was bad. I'm sorry. Shh. You weren't bad. You were perfect. You were exactly what a child should be. But Papa said, I know what your father said, but he's wrong. The door opened again. This time it was the Duke. He stood in the doorway, taking in the scene, his daughter sobbing in the governess's arms, toys scattered everywhere, the schedule abandoned. His face was carved from ice. Lily, go to your room. Papa, I didn't mean now. The child fled. Elena stood, shoulders back, chin up, ready for whatever came next. The Duke closed the door behind him, looked at her with those cold, cold eyes. You're dismissed. I know. You defied every instruction I gave you. You undermined the discipline I've worked years to establish. You've made my daughter worse, not better. No. Elena's voice was steady. I've made her human again. And you can't stand it because it reminds you that you're still capable of feeling something. That all that ice you've built around yourself hasn't completely frozen your heart. That's what you really can't forgive me for. Not the toys or the laughter or the broken schedule, but the fact that I showed you what you've been doing to that little girl, and you know I'm right. The Duke's jaw clenched. Get out! I will. But first you're going to hear this. Your daughter is not your wife. She's not weak because she feels things. She's not going to die because she cries. The only thing that's going to kill her is you and your suffocating rules and your refusal to see her as anything more than a problem to be solved. You know nothing about... I know that she begged me not to leave. I know that she's terrified of disappointing you. I know that she hasn't had a real hug from you since her mother died 3 years ago. I know that she goes to sleep every night wondering if she's worth loving or if she's just too broken to fix. Elena's voice cracked. And I know that if you don't change, if you don't let her be more than this perfect, empty thing you're trying to create, you're going to lose her. Maybe not to death, but to something worse. You're going to lose who she really is, and you'll never get that back. Silence filled the room. The Duke stood there, every muscle rigid, his hands fisted at his sides. Then, so quietly Elena almost missed it, he said, She was screaming. What? When Margaret died, Lily was screaming, wouldn't stop, for days, weeks. The doctor said she needed to be controlled or she'd make herself sick. His voice was hoarse, like the words were being dragged out of him. I didn't know what to do, how to fix it. So I did what I knew, structure, rules, discipline, and it worked. She stopped crying, stopped screaming, stopped everything. Elena's anger faltered. Just for a moment, she saw past the ice to the man underneath, the one who'd lost his wife and didn't know how to help his daughter grieve, the one who'd been drowning in his own pain and chose to freeze rather than feel. She stopped because you taught her that feelings were dangerous, Elena said softly. But they're not, Your Grace. They're human, and she needs to feel them, all of them, if she's ever going to heal. I can't... He stopped, turned away. I can't watch her break the way Margaret broke. Then don't. Watch her bend instead. Watch her learn that she can feel pain and survive it, that she can cry and still be strong, that loving people is worth the risk of losing them. You're asking me to let her suffer. I'm asking you to let her live. The Duke was quiet for a long time. Then he looked at her, and his eyes were different. Not warm, but not completely frozen either. You're still dismissed. Elena nodded. She'd expected nothing else. I understand. But... She stopped. You have until the end of the month. 1 month to prove your methods work. If Lily shows genuine improvement, not just compliance, but actual well-being, you stay. If not, you leave. And Mrs. Pembroke's report goes to the board that oversees governess placements. You'll never work in education again. It was still a trap, but it was also a chance. And in that month, Elena said carefully, I have full authority over her education. No interference. No schedule except what I determine, within reason. Meaning, meaning I'll allow your methods. But she still needs to learn the required subjects. She still needs to be prepared for society, and she still needs to show actual progress. Agreed. The Duke held out his hand. Elena stared at the offer of partnership instead of dismissal. Then she took it. His grip was firm, cold, but there. Don't make me regret this, Miss Whitlock. I won't. He left without another word. Elena stood alone in the schoolroom, her hand still tingling from his touch, her heart pounding. 1 month, 30 days to transform a broken child into someone who could survive this world without losing herself in the process. It wasn't enough time. It would never be enough time. But it was all she had. She walked to Lily's room, knocked gently. Come in. The child was curled on her bed, face blotchy from crying, clutching the magic stone from the pond. I thought you'd be gone, Lily whispered. Not yet. Your father gave me another chance. Gave us another chance. Really? Really. 1 month to show him that my way works, that you can be strong and still feel things, that rules aren't the only way to survive. Lily sat up slowly. What if we can't? What if I'm too broken? Elena sat on the bed, took the child's small hand in hers. Then we'll be broken together. But I don't think you're broken, Lily. I think you're bent. And bent things can straighten, with time, with care, with someone who refuses to give up on them. You won't leave? Not unless they drag me out. For the first time since this nightmare began, Lily smiled. Not a big smile, not a complete one, but real. And in that moment, Elena knew she'd fight heaven and hell to protect it, even if it cost her everything. Even if it cost her everything. The words haunted Elena through the night. She'd won a temporary reprieve, but the real battle was just beginning. 1 month to prove that love could heal what control had broken. 1 month before Mrs. Pembroke's venomous report buried her career forever. 1 month to save a child who'd forgotten how to be one. Elena barely slept. When dawn crept through her window, she was already dressed, a new plan forming in her mind. If the Duke wanted results, she'd give him results, but not the kind he expected. She found Lily in the schoolroom at 6 o'clock, sitting at her desk with perfect posture, hands folded, waiting for instructions like a prisoner awaiting sentence. Good morning, Elena said softly. Good morning, Miss Whitlock. The child's voice was flat. Yesterday's smile had vanished, replaced by the familiar emptiness. Are we doing regular lessons today, or the other kind? The question broke Elena's heart, that a 6-year-old had to ask permission to be happy. Both. We're going to learn everything your father wants, but we're going to do it differently, starting now. Elena pulled a chair next to Lily's desk instead of standing behind the teacher's podium. Tell me something. What do you actually want to learn? Not what you're supposed to want. What interests you? Lily stared at her hands. I'm not supposed to. I know what you're supposed to do. I'm asking what you want to do. Silence stretched between them. Then, so quietly, Elena had to lean in to hear, I want to know why Mama died. The words landed like stones in still water. Elena took a slow breath. That's a very hard question, Lily. Everyone says it was because she was weak, because she couldn't be strong enough when I was born. But I don't understand. How does having a baby make you weak? Don't you have to be strong to make a person? Tears burned Elena's eyes. She blinked them back. Your mother wasn't weak. Sometimes bodies just stop working the way they should. It's not about strength or weakness. It's just terrible luck. So it was my fault. No, never. Elena took Lily's small hands in hers. Listen to me. What happened to your mother was not your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. Sometimes awful things happen, and there's no one to blame. Not you, not her, just bad luck and worse timing. Papa thinks she was weak. I heard him tell Mrs. Hartwell once. He said she fell apart when things got hard. Elena felt all anger flash hot in her chest. Your father is wrong about a lot of things. Being sad isn't falling apart. Crying isn't weakness. Your mother loved you so much she gave her life to bring you into this world. That's the strongest thing a person can do. Lily looked up, tears streaming down her face. Then why does Papa hate me? He doesn't. He does. I see it. He can't even look at me. He gives me rules and schedules, but he never just sits with me, never reads to me, never holds me when I'm scared. Her voice cracked. If Mama was strong, and she died anyway, and I'm just like her, does that mean I'm going to die too? Elena pulled the child into her arms, holding her while she sobbed. Great, heaving sobs that shook her tiny frame. All the grief she'd been holding back for 3 years pouring out in a flood. You're not going to die, Elena whispered fiercely. You're going to live. You're going to grow up strong and brave and kind. You're going to have a beautiful life, I promise you. How do you know? Because I won't let anything else happen. And neither will your father, even if he doesn't know how to show it. They stayed like that for a long time. When Lily finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and wet, but something in her eyes looked clearer, like lancing a wound to let the poison out. I'm sorry I cried, she whispered. Don't be. Crying is how we clean out the hurt. There's no shame in it. Miss Pembroke said, Miss Pembroke is a miserable woman who wouldn't know real strength if it bit her. We're not listening to her anymore. For the first time that morning, Lily smiled. Small, fragile, but real. The rest of the day, Elena threw out the schedule entirely. They talked about grief and loss. They read poetry, real poetry, the kind that made you feel things. They went to the pond and talked about Margaret, about what Lily remembered, about the mother who'd loved her. And slowly, painfully, the child began to thaw. But freedom came with a price. That evening, Elena was summoned to the Duke's study again. She went with her spine straight and her jaw set, ready for whatever accusation he'd throw at her. He was standing by the window, backlit by the dying sun, his silhouette sharp and unforgiving. Mrs. Hartwell tells me you abandoned the schedule entirely today. I did. We agreed I'd have authority over Lily's education. That's what I'm doing, educating her, just not in the way you expected. The Duke turned. His face was unreadable. And what exactly did you teach my daughter today? What vital lesson required throwing out mathematics and French? I taught her that grief isn't shameful, that talking about her mother won't kill her, that it's okay to remember the people we've lost. Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, maybe. Or rage. You had no right. I had every right. You gave it to me when you hired me to help her. Elena stepped closer, refusing to be intimidated. She asked me why her mother died. She asked me if it was her fault. She asked me if you hate her because she reminds you of Margaret. The Duke went very still. What did you tell her? The truth. That it wasn't her fault, that her mother wasn't weak, that grief is normal and healthy, and the only way through pain is to feel it, not bury it. You're teaching her to wallow. I'm teaching her to survive. There's a difference. Elena's voice shook with barely controlled fury. That child has been drowning in guilt for 3 years because no one would talk to her honestly about what happened. She thinks she killed her mother. She thinks you can't stand to look at her because she's a reminder of your loss. And she's terrified she's going to die the same way because she's too much like Margaret. The Duke's face had gone pale. She said that? Word for word. Silence crashed between them. The Duke crossed to his desk, gripped the edge like it was the only thing holding him upright. I didn't mean for her to think, but she does. Because you won't talk to her, won't touch her, won't let her see that you still love her underneath all that ice. I'm protecting her. You're destroying her, Elena's control snapped. You think if she doesn't feel anything, she won't hurt. But that's not how humans work. We're not machines you can program with the right rules. We're messy and complicated, and we need connection to survive. Especially children, especially traumatized children who've lost everything. And you're an expert on trauma? His voice was cold, cutting. Yes, actually, I am. Elena met his gaze without flinching. I know what it's like to lose a parent, to be left alone with guilt and shame and nowhere to put it, to have people look at you like you're contaminated because of something you didn't do. I know what it feels like to want to die because living hurts too much. The Duke stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Your father shot himself in his study 6 weeks ago, left me to deal with his debts and his disgrace and a world that decided I was guilty by association. Her voice was steady now, hard as stone. So yes, Your Grace, I know a little something about trauma. And I know that what Lily needs isn't more rules. It's someone who gives a damn whether she lives or dies. Someone who'll hold her when she's scared. Someone who'll tell her she's worth loving even when everything feels broken. I do love her. Then show her. Stop hiding behind schedules and discipline and this ridiculous idea that emotions are weakness. Sit with her. Talk to her. Let her see that you're human too, that you're scared and hurting and trying to figure this out. She doesn't need you to be perfect. She needs you to be present. The Duke's jaw clenched. You don't understand what you're asking. I understand perfectly. I'm asking you to be vulnerable, to risk feeling something again, to open up that carefully controlled heart and let your daughter in. Elena's voice softened. I know it's terrifying. I know it feels safer to stay frozen, but Lily is running out of time. Another year like this and she'll be gone. Not dead, but so deep inside herself that we'll never get her back. Is that really what you want? Of course not. Then do something about it. Tonight. Go to her room. Read her a story. Hold her if she'll let you. Just be her father, not her warden. The Duke turned away, shoulders rigid. Get out. Your Grace, I said get out. Elena left, her hands shaking, her heart pounding. She'd pushed too hard, said too much, but she couldn't bring herself to regret it. If she was going down, at least she'd go down fighting. She made it halfway down the corridor before she heard it, a sound so unexpected it stopped her in her tracks. Sobbing, quiet, muffled, but unmistakable. Elena turned back slowly, pressed her ear to the study door. The Duke was crying, not the controlled, dignified tears of a man who'd mastered his emotions, but raw, broken sobs, the kind that came from years of buried grief finally clawing its way to the surface. Elena's anger evaporated. In its place, unexpected compassion. He wasn't a monster, just a man who'd loved his wife so much that losing her had shattered him, who'd locked his heart away to survive and forgotten how to open it again. She stood there for a long moment, listening to him break, wanting desperately to help, but knowing he'd never accept comfort from her. Finally, she walked away. That night, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her small room, mind racing, wondering if she'd finally pushed the Duke too far, if tomorrow would bring her dismissal after all. Around midnight, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside her door. She froze. The footsteps stopped. A shadow darkened the crack beneath her door, then moved on. Elena waited, breath held, until silence returned. She crept to her door, opened it a crack, and peered out. The corridor was empty, but 3 doors down, a sliver of light showed beneath Lily's door. Someone was in there. Elena slipped out, moved quietly down the hallway, pressed her ear to Lily's door, voices, low, tentative. Don't have to if you don't want to. That was the Duke, his voice rough, uncertain, nothing like the cold precision she was used to. Will you stay? Lily's voice, small, hopeful. If you'd like. I would. Silence. Then the creak of bed springs, the rustle of blankets. Papa? Yes? I miss Mama. A long pause. Elena held her breath. I do too, sweetheart. Every day. Can I tell you about her? About what I remember? Another pause. Longer this time. Then, so quietly Elena almost missed it. I'd like that very much. Elena backed away from the door, tears streaming down her face. It was a start. A small, fragile start. But it was something. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a whirlwind of change. Elena restructured everything. Mathematics became a game with stones from the pond. French lessons happened during walks through the garden. History came alive through stories instead of memorization. Piano transformed from mechanical exercises to real music, simple melodies that Lily chose herself. And slowly, miraculously, the child bloomed. Color crept into her cheeks. Laughter became more frequent. She ate more, slept better, asked questions with genuine curiosity instead of fear. The Duke watched from a distance, attending their weekly reviews but saying little. Elena couldn't read his expression, didn't know if he approved or was simply biding his time before lowering the axe. But he kept coming to Lily's room at night. Elena heard them sometimes. Quiet conversations about Margaret, about memories, about fears and hopes. Father and daughter learning how to talk to each other again. It should have been enough. It wasn't. Because while Blackmore Hall transformed from the inside, the outside world was sharpening its knives. Mrs. Pembroke had been busy. Elena first learned about it during a rare trip to the village for supplies. She'd taken Lily along, another small freedom, and they were browsing the bookshop when Elena overheard two women talking. Disgraceful, really, the Duke letting that woman corrupt his daughter. I heard she's the one, Charles Whitlock's daughter, the swindler who killed himself. Like father, like daughter, I suppose, probably seducing her way into the Duke's good graces. With a child in the house, shameful. Elena's blood ran cold. She looked down at Lily, hoping the child hadn't heard, but Lily's face had gone white. Miss Elena, why are they talking about you like that? Just gossip, sweetheart. Don't pay attention. They said your father was a swindler, that you're seducing Papa. What does that mean? Elena's hands clenched. She wanted to march over to those women and tear them apart with words. But Lily was watching, waiting. It means people like to make up stories about things they don't understand. My father made mistakes, bad ones. But I'm not him, and what I'm doing with your father is teaching you, nothing more. Lily nodded slowly, but doubt had crept into her eyes. They left without buying anything. That night, Elena was summoned to the Duke's study yet again. He was standing by the fireplace, a letter in his hand, his face carved from fury. Explain this. He thrust the letter at her. Elena read it. Her stomach sank with every line. It was from Mrs. Pembroke, addressed to the Duke, outlining in excruciating detail Elena's inappropriate methods, her dangerous influence, and, most damning, her suspect character given her father's criminal history. But it was the final paragraph that made Elena's blood freeze. I have it on good authority that Miss Whitlock has been seen in compromising positions with your grace, late-night visits to your study, private conversations behind closed doors. For the sake of your daughter's moral development, I strongly advise immediate dismissal before scandal tarnishes the Blackmore name beyond repair. This is insane, Elena breathed. We've never... I know that. The Duke's voice was tight. But the damage is done. This letter has been circulated. Copies sent to the church council, the local magistrate, several prominent families in the county. By tomorrow, everyone within 50 miles will believe you're my mistress. But it's not true. Truth doesn't matter. Perception does. He took the letter back, crumpled it. Mrs. Pembroke has connections, influence. She's been spreading rumors for weeks, apparently, painting you as a fortune hunter who seduced her way into my household. Why? What did I do to her? You defied her, proved her methods wrong, made her look foolish. The Duke's jaw clenched, and now she's making sure you pay for it. Elena's mind raced. So dismiss me, send me away. That's what she wants anyway. If I dismiss you now, it proves her right. Makes it look like there was something inappropriate to hide. And if you keep me, the scandal grows. People start questioning my judgment, my fitness as a father. Eventually, someone petitions to have Lily removed from my care for her own protection. Elena's knees went weak. They can do that? If enough influential people decide I'm morally unfit, yes, the church has authority over such matters, and Mrs. Pembroke's husband is on the bishop's council. The trap had closed, perfectly executed. What do we do? Elena whispered. The Duke was quiet for a long time. Then, you leave. Tonight. Quietly. No explanations. I'll put out a story that you took another position. In a few months, when things settle, the scandal dies. And Lily? I'll hire someone else. Someone with impeccable references and no controversial background. Someone who'll undo everything we've built. Better than having her taken away entirely. Elena stared at him. At this man who'd finally started to thaw, who'd been reading to his daughter at night, who'd been learning how to be human again. You're giving up. I'm being practical. You're being a coward. The Duke's eyes flashed. Excuse me? You heard me. You're letting Mrs. Pembroke win because you're too afraid to fight back, too afraid of scandal, too afraid of what people might think. I'm protecting my daughter by abandoning her again, by proving that the second things get difficult, you retreat behind your walls and your rules and your ice. Elena's voice shook with fury. We were making progress, real progress, Lily was healing, you were healing, and now you're going to throw it all away because some bitter woman spread lies? You don't understand the situation. I understand perfectly. I understand that you'd rather sacrifice the best thing that's happened to your daughter in 3 years than risk your precious reputation. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. I learned that when my father blew his brains out and left me to clean up his mess. Lily learned it when her mother died and her father turned into a stranger. And now you're teaching her another lesson, that people leave, that no one fights for her, that she's not worth the trouble. The Duke crossed to her in 2 strides. Don't you dare suggest I don't love my daughter. Then prove it. Fight for this. Fight for her. Fight for the progress we've made instead of rolling over the second someone threatens you. They stood inches apart, both breathing hard, the air between them crackling with tension. What would you have me do? His voice was low, dangerous. Challenge Mrs. Pembroke publicly? Make this scandal even bigger? Yes. That's insane. Maybe, but it's better than giving up. Elena met his gaze without flinching. You want to protect Lily? Then show her that you won't abandon her when things get hard. Show her that some battles are worth fighting even when you might lose. Show her that the people who love her will stand up for her no matter what the cost. And if we lose, if the church takes her anyway, then we lose fighting, together, instead of you sending me away and facing it alone. The Duke stared at her, something shifting in his eyes, something that looked almost like hope. You'd stay? Even knowing it might destroy what's left of your reputation? Elena laughed, bitter, sharp. My reputation was destroyed the day my father died. I have nothing left to lose. But Lily does. She has everything to lose. And I won't let that happen without a fight. Silence stretched between them. Then the Duke did something that shocked her to her core. He smiled. Not a big smile, not even a particularly warm one, but real. You're either the bravest woman I've ever met or the most reckless. Can't I be both? Apparently. He turned, paced to the window. All right, we fight. But we do it smart. No impulsive confrontations. We need evidence, proof that Mrs. Pembroke is lying, witnesses who can testify to your character. The staff won't speak against Mrs. Pembroke. She has too much power in the household network. We need someone independent, respected, preferably from the church. Elena's mind raced, then stopped on something. Reverend Collins. He was there during the evaluation. He saw how I work with Lily. He seemed decent. Maybe. The Duke's expression was thoughtful. It's worth trying. I'll send for him tomorrow. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you continue as normal. Let them see you have nothing to hide. And I'll start making inquiries about Mrs. Pembroke's connections. See if there's anything we can use. It was a plan, fragile, probably doomed to fail, but a plan nonetheless. Elena nodded. Thank you for not giving up. Don't thank me yet. This could still blow up in both our faces. I know, but at least we'll go down swinging. Something flickered in the Duke's eyes. Respect, maybe. Or something more complicated. Miss Whitlock. Yes. Earlier. When you said you'd lost everything, that you knew what it felt like to want to die because living hurt too much. He paused. Did you mean that? Elena swallowed hard. Yes. And yet you're here, fighting for my daughter, risking what little you have left. But because she's worth it. Because no child should have to suffer the way I suffered. The way she's been suffering. Elena's voice softened. Because maybe saving her is how I save myself. The Duke nodded slowly. For what it's worth, I'm glad you're here. Glad you pushed back. Glad you didn't let me destroy the best thing that's happened to this house in years. Are you saying I was right? Don't push your luck. But he was almost smiling again. And Elena felt something warm unfurl in her chest, something dangerous, something that felt uncomfortably like hope. The next morning, everything fell apart. Elena woke to shouting. She threw on her robe and ran into the corridor. Staff were gathered near the main staircase. Mrs. Hartwell stood in the center, her face pale, holding something in her hands. What's happening? Elena demanded. The housekeeper looked at her, and in her eyes, pity. This was delivered this morning, posted on the church door in the village. and apparently in every shop, every tavern, every public place within 20 miles. She handed Elena a broadsheet. Elena's hands shook as she read it. Scandal at Blackmore Hall. Duke's governess exposed as daughter of notorious criminal inappropriate relations alleged. The article was vicious. It detailed her father's crimes, her supposed seduction of the Duke, her dangerous influence over an innocent child. Every lie Mrs. Pembroke had been spreading, now printed in black and white for the world to see. But it was the final paragraph that made Elena's blood run cold. A public hearing has been called for this Sunday at St. Michael's Church to determine whether Miss Lily Blackmore should remain in her father's care, given the current moral climate of the household. All concerned citizens are encouraged to attend and make their voices heard in defense of innocent childhood. 3 days. They had 3 days before this became a public spectacle. Elena looked up at Mrs. Hartwell. "Where's Lily?" "In her room. She saw one of the footmen reading it. She knows." Elena ran. She found Lily curled on her bed, clutching Margaret the rag doll, her face streaked with tears. "They're going to take me away," the child whispered. "Aren't they?" Elena gathered her up. "No, never. I won't let them." "But the paper said—" "The paper is lying. Mrs. Pembroke is lying. None of it is true." "Then why are people believing it?" "Because people are scared and stupid, and they'd rather believe a comfortable lie than an uncomfortable truth." Elena pulled back, looked into Lily's eyes. "But we're going to fight this. Your father and I. We're going to prove they're wrong." "How?" "I don't know yet, but we will, I promise." Lily's lower lip trembled. "What if you can't? What if they take me away and put me somewhere horrible and I never see you or Papa again?" "That won't happen." "You don't know that." Lily's voice broke. "Mama said she'd never leave me and she died. You said you'd stay and now they're trying to make you go. Everyone leaves. Everyone." Elena's heart cracked. "Lily, listen to me. I am not leaving, not without a fight, and your father isn't either. We're going to stand up in front of all those people and tell them the truth. And if they don't believe us, then we'll fight them in court. And if that doesn't work, we'll run. All three of us. We'll leave this place and start over somewhere no one knows us." "You'd do that? Leave everything?" "I've already lost everything. The only thing I have left worth keeping is you." Lily threw her arms around Elena's neck and sobbed. Elena held her, making promises she had no idea how to keep, and prayed she was strong enough to see them through. The study door was open when Elena arrived an hour later. The Duke was inside with Reverend Collins. Both men looked up when she entered. "Miss Whitlock," the Reverend said. His face was kind, troubled. "I was just telling His Grace how deeply sorry I am about this situation." "Sorry enough to help?" Collins hesitated. "I want to, truly. But Mrs. Pembroke's husband is my superior. If I speak against her publicly, then you'd be doing the right thing instead of the easy thing. It's not that simple. It never is." Elena crossed to him, desperate. "Reverend, you saw me with Lily. You saw how I teach her, how she responds. You know I'm not what they're saying I am." "I believe that, yes. But belief and proof are different things, and at Sunday's hearing, they'll want proof." The Duke spoke up. "Then we give them proof. We bring Lily herself. Let her testify to the progress she's made." "Absolutely not." Elena's voice was sharp. "She's 6 years old. We're not putting her in front of a hostile crowd and making her perform like a trained animal." "Then what do you suggest?" "I don't know, but not that. Never that." Reverend Collins sighed. "There might be another way. If I could speak to some of my colleagues, quietly, get them to question Mrs. Pembroke's motives before the hearing. It wouldn't guarantee anything, but it might shift the tide." "Do it," the Duke said. "Whatever you need. Money, influence, anything." "I'll try. But, Your Grace, you should prepare for the worst. Even with support, the accusations are serious. And public opinion has already turned. Let it turn. I'm not giving up my daughter without a fight." After Collins left, Elena and the Duke stood in silence. Finally, she said, "This is my fault. If I hadn't pushed so hard, if I'd just followed the rules, then Lily would still be that empty shell we found 6 weeks ago. And I'd still be the man who was killing his daughter with kindness." The Duke turned to face her. "You asked me once why I hired you. Someone with no references, no experience, someone desperate. I remember. I hired you because everyone else wanted to maintain the status quo. Keep Lily quiet and controlled and broken. But something in your letter suggested you'd fight for her, that you wouldn't accept the easy answer. He stepped closer. I was right, and I'm grateful for it, even if it cost me everything. Elena's throat tightened. You might lose her. I know, but at least I'll know I fought, that I tried to be the father she deserved instead of the warden I'd become. His voice dropped. That's because of you. Whatever happened Sunday, you should know that. They stood too close enough that Elena could see flecks of blue in his gray eyes, close enough to feel the heat of him, close enough to make a terrible, reckless mistake. She stepped back. We should prepare. Figure out what we're going to say, how we're going to defend this. Yes, of course. But something in his expression said he'd noticed the moment too. The almost. The 3 days until Sunday passed in a blur of preparation and mounting dread. The Duke called in favors, contacted allies, built a case for his fitness as a father. Elena worked with Lily, trying to shield her from the storm while preparing her for the possibility that everything might change. And at night, Elena lay awake imagining all the ways this could go wrong. Sunday morning arrived gray and cold, like the world itself was passing judgment. Elena dressed in her best, which wasn't saying much, and helped Lily into a simple blue dress. The child was silent, pale, her eyes huge with fear. Whatever happens, Elena said softly, remember that I love you. Your father loves you, and that won't change no matter what those people say. I'm scared. Me too. But we're going to be brave together. The Duke was waiting in the entrance hall. He wore black, as always, but somehow he looked different, harder, more dangerous, like a man preparing for war. His eyes found Elena's, held. Ready? No, not even close. But Elena nodded anyway. They rode to the church in silence. The streets were crowded. Half the county had turned out for the spectacle. People whispered and pointed as their carriage passed. Inside St. Michael's, every pew was packed. The air was thick with judgment and barely concealed excitement. This was entertainment, a scandal to dissect and discuss for months to come. Mrs. Pembroke sat in the front row, her face serene, her victory already assured in her own mind. The hearing was called to order, and Elena's entire world balanced on a knife's edge. The bishop stood in the pulpit, ancient and severe. We are gathered here to address serious allegations regarding the moral character of the Blackmore household and the welfare of the child, Lily Blackmore. Miss Pembroke, please present your case. Mrs. Pembroke rose smoothly. Thank you, Your Eminence. I bring these concerns not out of malice, but out of genuine fear for an innocent child's well-being. Miss Elena Whitlock, the current governess, is the daughter of Charles Whitlock, a known criminal who defrauded dozens of families before taking his own life. She has no formal training, no references, and has been observed engaging in inappropriate familiarity with His Grace. That's a lie. Elena stood before she could stop herself. The bishop's gaze cut to her. You will have your turn to speak, Miss Whitlock. Sit down. Elena sat, her hands shaking with rage. Mrs. Pembroke continued, laying out every accusation, every twisted half-truth, painting Elena as a seductress, and the Duke as a man whose judgment had been compromised by grief and loneliness. It was a masterful performance. When she finished, the crowd murmured approval. Your Grace, the bishop said. Your response? The Duke stood, and when he spoke, his voice carried the full weight of his title. Everything Mrs. Pembroke has said is fabrication designed to destroy a woman who committed the unforgivable sin of actually helping my daughter. Yes, Miss Whitlock's father was a criminal. She is not. Yes, she has no formal training. She didn't need it. In 6 weeks, she accomplished what a dozen governesses couldn't in 3 years. She gave my daughter back her childhood, her laughter, her hope. And for that, I will not apologize. But the allegations of impropriety are lies. Miss Whitlock has been nothing but professional. Any private conversations were regarding Lily's education and well-being. Any late-night visits were her checking on my daughter after nightmares. If Mrs. Pembroke sees scandal in compassion, that says more about her mind than mine. The crowd shifted, uncertain now. Mrs. Pembroke stood again. Your Grace, surely you must admit that a woman of questionable background, has more integrity in her smallest finger than you have in your entire body. Gasps rippled through the church. The Duke wasn't finished. You want to question fitness? Let's question yours. You grabbed my 6-year-old daughter by the arm hard enough to leave bruises. You called her disturbed for crying. You recommended I lock her in her room when she wouldn't comply with your medieval methods. And when Miss Whitlock proved your approach was cruel and ineffective, you decided to destroy her rather than admit you were wrong. That is slander. It's truth. And I have witnesses. The Duke gestured. Mrs. Hartwell stood from the back pew. The housekeeper walked forward, her face pale but determined. Everything his grace said is true. I saw the bruises. I heard Miss Pembroke's recommendations, and I've watched Miss Lily transform under Miss Whitlock's care. She eats now. She sleeps. She smiles. For the first time in 3 years, that child looks like a child instead of a ghost. Another witness stood, then another. Servants Elena had thought wouldn't risk speaking, but one by one they testified to the changes in Lily, to Elena's dedication, to the Duke's renewed attention to his daughter. The tide was turning. Mrs. Pembroke's face had gone rigid. This proves nothing. The child could still be at risk. Then ask her. Every head turned. Lily stood in the back of the church, small and pale in her blue dress. Elena's heart stopped. Lily, no. But the child walked forward, her steps steady, her chin up. She stopped in front of the bishop. I want to say something. Child, this isn't appropriate. Please, it's my life. Don't I get to talk about my life? The bishop looked to the Duke. He nodded, his face unreadable. Very well, speak. Lily's voice was small but clear. Everyone thinks Miss Elena is bad because her father did bad things. But that's not fair. My mama died and everyone thinks it's my fault because I was born. But it's not my fault. Miss Elena taught me that. She taught me that we're not responsible for things we can't control, that we can only be responsible for who we choose to be. Elena's eyes burned with tears. And Miss Elena chose to be kind. To teach me that feeling things doesn't make me weak, that crying is okay, that remembering mama is good, not bad. She chose to stay even when it was hard. Even when people were mean, she chose to love me when I thought no one could. Lily's voice broke. So if you take her away, you're not protecting me. You're taking away the first person who ever made me feel safe. The first person who ever made me believe I was worth saving. Silence filled the church. Then Lily turned to Mrs. Pembroke. And you hurt me. You grabbed me and called me names and made me feel like I was broken. You're the bad one, not Miss Elena. You. The crowd erupted. The bishop called for order, his face grave. This is most irregular. We will need time to deliberate. No. The Duke's voice cut through the chaos. He walked to stand beside Lily, placed his hand on her shoulder. There will be no deliberation. My daughter has spoken, and I stand with her. If this assembly decides Miss Whitlock must leave, then Lily and I leave with her. I will resign my title, sell the estate, and we will start over somewhere that judges people by their character, not their parentage. The crowd went silent. The bishop stared. Your Grace, you cannot be serious. I have never been more serious about anything in my life. My daughter's well-being is worth more than my title, more than my reputation, more than all of this. He gestured at the church, the crowd, the trappings of power. Miss Whitlock gave me back my daughter, and I will not abandon her for the sake of appearances. He looked at Elena then, and in his eyes, something that made her heart stutter. The question, he said softly, is whether she'll have us. Every eye turned to Elena. She stood on shaking legs, crossed to where the Duke and Lily waited, and without a word, took Lily's hand. The child's fingers wrapped around hers, tight, trusting. Elena looked at the bishop, at Mrs. Pembroke, at the crowd of people who'd come to see her destroyed. I'm not going anywhere, she said clearly, and neither is this family. The church erupted again. The bishop tried to restore order, but it was chaos now. People arguing, Mrs. Pembroke shouting accusations, Reverend Collins standing and calling for reason. In the middle of it all, the Duke leaned close to Elena. That was either the bravest thing you've ever done or the stupidest. Can it be both? His lips quirked, almost a smile. Apparently. Then Lily tugged on Elena's hand. Does this mean you're staying? Really staying? Elena looked down at the small, hopeful face, at the child who'd become everything to her in 6 short weeks. Really staying, she promised, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The bishop finally regained control, his face thunderous. He declared the hearing postponed pending further investigation. But everyone knew the truth. The tide had turned. As they left the church, Mrs. Pembroke blocked their path. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I have connections, influence. I will see you ruined." The Duke stepped forward, and when he spoke, his voice was ice. "If you ever come near my daughter or Miss Whitlock again, I will use every ounce of power I have to destroy you. I will expose every lie you've told, every child you've hurt, every cruel method you've championed. And when I'm done, no one in England will hire you to teach a dog tricks. Are we clear?" Mrs. Pembroke went pale. "You wouldn't dare. Try me." She fled. Outside, the crowd had dispersed, but whispers followed them to the carriage. Let them whisper, Elena thought. Let them talk. She'd survived worse than gossip. They rode home in silence. But it was a different kind of silence now. Not cold, not empty, just peaceful. Lily fell asleep against Elena's shoulder, exhausted from the emotional toll. The Duke watched them, his expression unreadable. Finally he spoke. "What you said in there, about not going anywhere, did you mean it?" Elena met his eyes. "Every word. Even though it might cost you any chance at a normal life, at marriage, respectability, all the things women are supposed to want? I stopped caring about those things the day my father died. All I want now is to make a difference, to help this child grow up knowing she's loved." She paused. "Is that enough?" The Duke was quiet for a long moment. Then, "It's everything." And the way he looked at her made Elena's breath catch. They arrived at Blackmore Hall as the sun set, painting the stone walls gold. The house didn't look quite so forbidding anymore. Inside, Mrs. Hartwell waited with the other servants who'd testified. They stood in a line, uncertain, waiting for judgment. The Duke stopped, looked at them. "Thank you, all of you. What you did today took courage. I won't forget it." Relief flooded their faces. Mrs. Hartwell stepped forward. "Your Grace, if I may, I owe Miss Whitlock an apology. I doubted her, thought she was reckless and inappropriate, but she was right about Miss Lily, right about what the child needed, and I should have supported her from the beginning instead of reporting her every move." "You did what you thought was right," Elena said softly. "I don't blame you for that." "Well, you should. I nearly cost this family everything." The housekeeper's voice was firm. "But I'll make it right. Whatever you need going forward, you have my full support." It was an olive branch, an alliance. Elena took it gratefully. That night, after Lily was tucked into bed, with both Elena and the Duke reading her a story together, a new tradition, Elena walked back to her small room on the 3rd floor. She'd survived. Against all odds, she'd survived. And more than that, she'd won. She was changing into her nightgown when a knock sounded on her door. Elena opened it to find the Duke standing in the corridor. "Your Grace, is something wrong?" "No, I just needed to say something before I lost my nerve." Her heart kicked. "All right." He stepped inside, improper, scandalous, everything they'd just been accused of, and closed the door behind him. "What you did today," he said slowly, "standing up for Lily, for us, risking everything, was the only choice I could make. But it shouldn't have been. You deserve better than this. Better than a cold house, and a damaged child, and a Duke who doesn't know how to—" He stopped, turned away. Elena's breath caught. "Doesn't know how to what?" The silence stretched. Then so quietly she almost missed it. "Doesn't know how to tell you that you've become essential, that the thought of losing you is unbearable, that somewhere in the past 6 weeks you stopped being the governess and became something else, something I don't have words for." Elena's world tilted. "Your Grace." "Adrian. When it's just us, call me Adrian." "Adrian." The name felt strange on her tongue, intimate. "I don't know what to say." He turned back, and the look in his eyes was raw, vulnerable, everything he'd spent 3 years hiding. "Then don't say anything. Just stay. Keep being exactly who you are. Keep loving my daughter. Keep challenging me. Keep making this house feel like a home instead of a tomb. I can do that. Good. He moved to the door, then paused. Elena? Her name. He'd never used her first name before. Yes? Thank you for fighting, for not giving up on us. Thank you for letting me. He left, and Elena stood alone in her small room, her heart pounding, wondering what the hell just happened. Wondering where this dangerous, impossible thing between them could possibly go. Wondering if she was brave enough to find out. But those were questions for tomorrow. Tonight, she'd won a battle. Tomorrow, she'd figure out how to win the war. She climbed into bed, exhaustion finally claiming her, and in the darkness, she smiled. Because, for the first time in 6 weeks, maybe for the first time in years, Elena Whitlock felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Fighting for something that mattered, loving a child who needed her, and maybe, just maybe, falling for a man who'd forgotten how to let himself be loved. It was terrifying. It was reckless. It was everything she'd never planned for. But it was hers, and she wasn't letting go without a fight. Outside her window, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. But inside Blackmore Hall, something else was building, something that felt dangerously like hope. And in the morning, everything would change again. And in the morning, everything would change again. Elena woke to voices outside her door, low, urgent. She sat up, heart hammering, the peace of last night dissolving into cold reality. Whatever they'd won yesterday was temporary. She knew that. The real battle was just beginning. She dressed quickly and stepped into the corridor to find Mrs. Hartwell speaking with one of the footmen. Both fell silent when they saw her. What's happened? Mrs. Hartwell's face was grim. The village, miss. Half the shops have posted notices. No service to Blackmore household. The butcher refused our morning order. The baker as well. They're organizing against us. Elena's stomach dropped. Mrs. Pembroke. Most likely, she may have lost yesterday, but she's not finished. The housekeeper handed her a note. This came an hour ago, hand-delivered. Elena unfolded it. The handwriting was elegant, poisonous. You may have swayed the bishop temporarily, but public opinion is mine to control. By week's end, you'll be so isolated that leaving will be your only option. Enjoy your hollow victory while it lasts. No signature, none needed. Where's the Duke? In his study. He's been there since dawn. Writing letters, I think, calling in favors. Elena found him exactly where Mrs. Hartwell said, surrounded by half-written correspondence, his face drawn with exhaustion. You didn't sleep, she said from the doorway. Adrian looked up. For a moment, his guard was down, and she saw the toll yesterday had taken. Then he shuddered it away. Neither did you, apparently. I slept fine until I heard about the village. She crossed to his desk, set down Mrs. Pembroke's note. She's escalating. He read it, jaw tightening. I expected as much. I've been writing to suppliers in neighboring counties. We can have goods brought in. It'll be expensive and inconvenient, but manageable. That's not a solution. That's survival. She'll just tighten the noose until we suffocate. Then what do you suggest? Elena thought for a moment. An idea forming. Reckless. Probably insane. But no more insane than anything else they'd done. We go public. Properly public. Not defending ourselves in a church hearing, but actively telling our story. Show people the truth about what's happening here. About Lily's progress. About what you've built. You want to invite scrutiny? I want to control the narrative before Mrs. Pembroke does it for us. Right now, people only know what she's told them. They see a scandal. A fallen woman and a grieving duke making poor choices. We need to show them something different. Adrian leaned back in his chair. How? A garden party. Here. Next week. Invite everyone. The whole county. Let them see Blackmore Hall. Let them meet Lily. Let them witness firsthand that we're not the monsters Mrs. Pembroke painted. That's insane. Probably. But it's better than hiding. Better than letting her starve us out. He studied her for a long moment. Then, impossibly, he smiled. You really are the most reckless woman I've ever met. Is that a yes? It's a let me think about it, which, considering I should be throwing you out for suggesting something so audacious, is progress. Elena returned his smile. I'll take it. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. Elena, last night, what I said, we don't have to talk about it. But I want to. I need you to understand that I meant every word. You've become, he paused, searching for language, essential to this household, to Lily, to me. The air between them went thick. Elena's pulse kicked. Adrian, A knock interrupted them. Mrs. Hartwell again, her face pale. Your Grace, Miss Whitlock, you need to see this. They followed her to the entrance hall where a crowd of servants had gathered. Through the open front door, Elena could see carriages, at least a dozen, parked along the drive. What is this? Adrian demanded. Visitors, Your Grace. They started arriving 10 minutes ago, all of them asking for you. Adrian and Elena exchanged glances. Then he straightened his coat and walked outside. The carriages bore the crests of prominent families. The Ashfords, the Sterlings, the Harringtons. People Adrian had grown up with. People who'd attended his wedding. People who'd sent polite condolences when Margaret died and then quietly distanced themselves. A woman emerged from the first carriage, late 50s, elegantly dressed, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Adrian Blackmore, she said. Not a question. Lady Ashford. Adrian's voice was carefully neutral. This is unexpected. I imagine so. May we come in? That depends on why you're here. Lady Ashford's expression was unreadable. We attended the hearing yesterday. We saw what happened, and we've come to make our position clear. Elena's heart sank. Here it came. The final blow. These people would align with Mrs. Pembroke, add their voices to the condemnation, and that would be that. But Lady Ashford's next words shocked her to her core. We've come to offer our support. Silence. Adrian blinked. I'm sorry? You heard correctly. That spectacle yesterday was an embarrassment, not because of you or Miss Whitlock, but because of the small-minded fools who thought tearing down a grieving man and a courageous young woman was somehow righteous. She gestured to the other carriages. We represent 24 families, all of whom witnessed Mrs. Pembroke's cruelty and your daughter's remarkable bravery, and we're here to say that we stand with you. More people emerged from the carriages. Faces Elena recognized from the church. Some she didn't. All watching with varying degrees of curiosity and determination. Lord Harrington stepped forward. Adrian, I should have reached out sooner, after Margaret died, when you were struggling. I let my own discomfort with grief keep me away, and I've regretted it ever since. But what I saw yesterday, that child defending her governess, you willing to give up everything for her well-being, that's the man I remember. The friend I lost touch with, and I'd like to remedy that if you'll allow it. Adrian's composure cracked, just for a second. Then he nodded, not trusting his voice. Lady Sterling spoke next. We also heard about the village merchants refusing service. That stops today. We've already spoken to them. Made it clear that any establishment that refuses to serve Blackmore Hall will lose our patronage as well. They reconsidered quite quickly. Elena couldn't believe what she was hearing. Yesterday, they'd been pariahs. Today, allies were materializing out of nowhere. Why? She asked. Why now? Why help us? Lady Ashford turned to her. Because, my dear, what Mrs. Pembroke did to you is what people like her have been doing to women for centuries. Tearing us down for being too bold, too competent, too willing to break rules that were designed to keep us small. I'm too old to watch it happen again without doing something about it. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. I know who your father was. I know what he did. And I'm telling you that his crimes are not yours to carry. You've done something remarkable here. Don't let bitter people convince you otherwise. Elena's throat tightened. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. This won't be easy. Mrs. Pembroke has allies of her own, but you're not fighting alone anymore. Lady Ashford turned back to Adrian. Now, I believe there was mention of a garden party. Adrian looked at Elena, eyebrows raised. She shrugged. News travels fast, apparently. Not news, Lady Ashford corrected. Eavesdropping. Your housekeeper has loose lips when plied with tea. She smiled at Mrs. Hartwell, who had the grace to look embarrassed. But it's a brilliant idea. Let society see the real Blackmore Hall. We'll help you organize it. Make it the event of the season. What followed was a whirlwind. The ladies descended on the house like a benevolent invasion, taking stock of the grounds, the kitchens, the entertaining spaces. They brought servants, supplies, expertise. Within hours, plans were underway for what Lady Ashford declared would be a garden party that will make Mrs. Pembroke choke on her tea. Elena found herself swept up in it. Consultations about menus and guest lists, discussions of music and decorations. It was overwhelming and exhilarating and terrifying all at once. Through it all, Lily watched with wide eyes. "Are all these people here for us?" she whispered to Elena during a brief moment of calm. "They are." "But why? They don't even know us." "They know enough. They saw you yesterday, saw how brave you were, and they decided you were worth fighting for." Lily's face scrunched up. "I wasn't brave, I was terrified. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means being scared and doing the thing anyway." Elena smoothed the child's hair. "You stood up in front of all those people and told the truth. That's the bravest thing I've ever seen." "Even braver than you yelling at Papa?" Elena laughed. "Maybe not quite that brave." Lily giggled. The sound was pure and joyful and made everything worthwhile. The week before the party passed in controlled chaos. Invitations went out to every family of consequence within 50 miles. Responses flooded back. Some declined, Mrs. Pembroke's supporters holding firm, but most accepted, driven by curiosity if nothing else. The house transformed. Dust covers came off furniture. Rooms that had been closed for years opened up. Gardens were manicured within an inch of their lives. The fountain, silent for 3 years, was repaired and set flowing. Blackmore Hall came alive. Elena threw herself into preparations, grateful for the distraction, because the alternative was thinking too hard about Adrian's confession, about the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't watching, about the dangerous warmth spreading through her chest whenever he was near. She couldn't afford those thoughts. Not now. Maybe not ever. But he made it difficult. 3 days before the party, he found her in the garden at sunset, directing the placement of additional seating. "You should rest," he said. "You've been working since dawn." "So have you." "I'm used to it. You're not." Elena straightened, wiping dirt from her hands. "I'm stronger than I look." "I know, but you don't have to prove it constantly." He moved closer. "Elena, I've been thinking about what happens after the party. Assuming it goes well, assuming we survive this. That's optimistic. I'm trying something new. It's called hope." He smiled, but it faded quickly. "Your position here, as Lily's governess. It's become complicated." Elena's stomach dropped. "You're dismissing me after all?" "No. The opposite." He took a breath. "I want to make your position permanent, official. Not just a temporary arrangement until the scandal dies down, but a genuine long-term commitment, head of household education, with a proper salary, proper quarters, proper respect." It was generous. More than generous. But something in his tone suggested there was more he wasn't saying. "Why does that sound like you're putting distance between us?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Because anything else would be inappropriate. You deserve security, stability, not whatever this is between us that I can't name and shouldn't feel." "And if I want whatever this is?" The words escaped before Elena could stop them. Adrian stared at her. "Elena, I know all the reasons it's impossible. You're a duke. I'm a governess. You're still grieving your wife. I'm the daughter of a criminal. Society would never accept it. It would damage your standing. Put Lily at risk. I know all of that." She stepped closer. "But when you look at me, I feel like I matter. Like I'm not just surviving, but actually living. And I haven't felt that since before my father died. Maybe not even then." "You do matter, more than you know." "Then why are you pushing me away?" "Because I'm trying to do the right thing for once in my life." His control cracked. "Because you deserve better than a damaged man in a cold house with more ghosts than future. Because I've already failed one woman I loved, and I won't do it again." The confession hung between them. Elena's heart was hammering. "You love me?" Adrian closed his eyes. "I didn't mean to. I tried not to. But somewhere between your impossible defiance and your fierce protection of my daughter, and the way you make this mausoleum feel like a home again, I fell. And I have no idea what to do about it." Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel the truth of his words resonating in her bones. "Adrian, Footsteps on the gravel path. They sprang apart. Mrs. Hartwell appeared, tactfully not commenting on their proximity. "Your Grace, Miss Whitlock, The musicians have arrived for rehearsal. They'd like direction on placement. Of course. Adrian's voice was carefully controlled again. We'll be right there. The housekeeper left. Elena and Adrian stood in the fading light, the moment broken, everything unsaid hanging heavy between them. We should go, he said finally. Yes, but neither moved. After the party, Adrian said quietly, when this is over, we'll talk, properly, about what this is and whether it can be anything. And if it can't, then at least we'll know we tried. That's more than most people get. It wasn't a promise, but it was something. Elena nodded. After the party, they walked back to the house separately, maintaining propriety, both acutely aware of the line they were dancing along. The day of the party dawned clear and warm. Elena woke early, nerves singing. Today would determine everything. Either society would accept them, or they'd be crushed under the weight of judgment and scandal. She dressed carefully in a new gown, a gift from Lady Ashford, who'd insisted Elena couldn't greet guests in her worn gray dresses. It was simple but elegant, deep blue that brought out her eyes. Nothing scandalous, but nothing apologetic either. She looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. Gone was the desperate, broken girl who'd arrived in the rain 8 weeks ago. In her place, someone who looked like she belonged, like she had worth. The transformation was startling. Lily knocked and entered without waiting, as had become her habit. She wore a dress the color of spring grass, another gift from their new allies, and her hair was loose around her shoulders instead of in tight braids. She looked like a child. Finally, "You're beautiful," Elena said. "So are you. Papa said so." Elena's cheeks heated. "He did? This morning, he was watching you in the garden, and he told Mrs. Hartwell you looked like springtime." Lily grinned. "I think he likes you." "Lily, it's okay. I like you too, and Mama would have liked you. She always said Papa needed someone who'd argue with him instead of just agreeing with everything." The casual mention of Margaret didn't hurt the way it would have weeks ago. Lily had learned to speak of her mother with love instead of agony. Another small victory. "Come on," Elena said, taking the child's hand. "Let's go make sure everything's perfect." The gardens were transformed. White tents billowed in the breeze. Tables draped in linen held elaborate refreshments. Flowers spilled from every surface. Musicians tuned instruments. Servants moved with practiced efficiency. It looked like something from a fairy tale. Adrian stood near the fountain, directing final preparations. He dressed formally, dark coat, pristine cravat, but there was something different about him. He stood taller, smiled more readily, like he'd shed a weight he'd been carrying for years. When he saw Elena, he stopped mid-sentence, just stared. "You look—" He caught himself, cleared his throat. "Everything looks wonderful. You've done an incredible job." "We all have." "Yes, but you made it happen. Don't diminish that." Their eyes held, the air between them charged. Lily giggled. "You're both being silly." The spell broke. They both laughed. "Out of the mouths of babes," Adrian murmured. Carriages began arriving at noon. The first guests were cautious, polite but distant, clearly curious about the scandal but not yet committed to either side. But as the afternoon progressed, as people saw the house, met Lily, witnessed the easy warmth between the Duke and his daughter, the atmosphere shifted. Lady Ashford worked the crowd like a general commanding troops, steering conversations, introducing Elena to influential people, making it clear through her presence and attention that Elena was under her protection. Others followed her lead. Soon Elena found herself genuinely conversing with people who weeks ago would have crossed the street to avoid her. It was surreal, overwhelming, wonderful. Lily was the unexpected star of the day. She moved through the crowd with surprising confidence, answering questions about her studies, playing piano for an appreciative audience, even laughing at appropriate moments. No one looking at her would see the hollow shell of 2 months ago. Elena watched her with pride that made her chest ache. Around 3 o'clock, a murmur rippled through the crowd. Elena turned to see a new arrival. Expensive carriage, liveried servants. The door opened and Mrs. Pembroke stepped out. The garden went silent. She walked toward them with her head high, her face set in pleasant lines, but her eyes were cold. "Your Grace," she said, dropping into a perfect curtsy. Thank you for the invitation. Adrian's voice was ice. I don't recall extending one. It must have been an oversight. Surely you wouldn't exclude someone so invested in Miss Lily's well-being. The audacity was breathtaking. Elena started forward, fury building, but Adrian's hand on her arm stopped her. Mrs. Pembroke, he said with dangerous calm, you are not welcome here. You have slandered my household, attacked Miss Whitlock's character, and attempted to have my daughter taken from me. If you have even a shred of decency, you'll leave. Now. But your grace, I only acted out of concern. You acted out of spite, and everyone here knows it. Adrian's voice carried across the garden. Every guest was watching now. You want to discuss Miss Lily's well-being? Let's discuss it. Publicly. Let's talk about how under your care she stopped eating, stopped sleeping, stopped being a child. How you grabbed her hard enough to leave bruises and called her disturbed for grieving her mother. Mrs. Pembroke's face paled. That's a lie. It's documented. I have statements from multiple witnesses, including my housekeeper, several servants, and Reverend Collins, who observed your methods firsthand and was appalled. You can't prove. I can, and I will. If you ever come near my family again, I will take those statements to every educational board, every church council, every family that's ever employed you. I will make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of woman you are. The threat hung in the air. Mrs. Pembroke looked around at the crowd, saw no sympathy, no allies, just cold judgment staring back. Lady Ashford stepped forward. You heard his grace. Leave. One by one, other guests moved to stand with Adrian and Elena. A wall of bodies and social power. Mrs. Pembroke had lost, and she knew it. This isn't over, she hissed. Yes, Elena said quietly. It is. You just don't know it yet. Mrs. Pembroke turned and fled. The garden erupted in applause. Elena's legs went weak. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed once, then released before anyone could comment. But the gesture said everything. The party continued for hours after that. The mood lighter, celebratory. People approached Elena now without reservation, complimented her work with Lily, asked about her methods. Several even requested her advice about their own children. It was acceptance. Real, genuine acceptance. As the sun began to set and guests started departing, Elena found herself standing alone for a moment, watching the last of the light paint the garden's gold. You did it. She turned to find Adrian beside her. We did it, she corrected. No, this was you, your idea, your courage, your refusal to back down. He smiled, and it transformed his face. I never thanked you properly. For everything you've done, for my daughter, for this house, for me. You don't need to thank. Yes, I do. He stepped closer. Improper, reckless. But the last guests were out of sight and the servants were occupied. Elena Whitlock, you came into my life like a storm, loud and chaotic and impossible to ignore. You challenged everything I thought I knew, forced me to feel things I'd spent years burying, made me remember what it was like to be human instead of just existing. Elena's heart was hammering. Adrian, I know all the reasons this can't work. I know what society will say, what people will think. I know I should be proper and distant and satisfied with you staying as Lily's governess and nothing more. He took her hand. But I can't, because I love you. And I have no idea when it happened or how to stop it, but I do. And I needed you to know that before I lose my nerve entirely. Elena stared at him, at this man who'd been carved from ice and grief and was now standing before her, vulnerable and open and terrified. I love you too, she whispered. I have for weeks. Maybe since that first day when you looked at me like I was a problem to solve, and I looked at you like you were a tyrant to topple. Maybe since you started reading to Lily at night. Maybe since you stood up for me in that church. I don't know when, but I do, and it's terrifying. We could keep it professional, maintain distance, never acknowledge this again. We could. But I don't want to. I want to see where this goes, even if it's complicated, even if it's scandalous, even if the whole world thinks we're insane. Adrian laughed, actually laughed. The sound was rusty from disuse, but genuine. They already think we're insane. Then we might as well give them something real to talk about. He pulled her closer, still proper, still careful, but closer. If we do this, he said seriously. It has to be right. Respectfully. I won't have people saying you seduced your way into my life. We do this properly. Courtship, chaperones. Time to let society adjust to the idea. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. Long enough that when I ask you to marry me, no one can claim it was impulse or scandal. Elena's breath caught. You want to marry me? Eventually, if you'll have me. A damaged duke with a traumatized daughter and a house full of ghosts. I'll have you. Ghosts and all. They stood there in the fading light, hands clasped, the future uncertain but no longer terrifying. Miss Elena! They sprang apart as Lily came running through the garden, breathless and grinning. Lady Ashford wants to teach me to play croquet, and she says, you have to supervise because Papa is hopeless at games. Adrian raised an eyebrow. Hopeless? Her word, not mine, Elena said, fighting a smile. Well then, I suppose I should prove her wrong. He offered Elena his arm, proper, appropriate, but his eyes said everything else. She took it. Together, with Lily chattering between them, they walked back toward the house. Around them, servants were clearing tables and extinguishing lanterns. The party was ending. But something else was beginning, something fragile and new and worth fighting for. Lady Ashford met them on the terrace. Ah, there you are. I was just telling Miss Lily that she has a real gift for music. Have you considered advanced training? I haven't, Adrian admitted, but it's worth exploring. Wonderful. I know an excellent instructor in London. I'll send you her information. Lady Ashford smiled at Elena. And you, my dear. That was masterfully done today. You've made quite an impression. Thank you for everything. Your support means I recognize courage when I see it and refuse to watch it be punished. She lowered her voice. Mrs. Pembroke won't recover from this. By tomorrow, everyone will know she was publicly ejected from Blackmore Hall. Her influence is finished. Will she retaliate? She'll try, but she's lost her power base, and without that, she's just a bitter woman shouting into the void. Lady Ashford squeezed Elena's hand. You're safe now, both of you. The Tun has made its choice and you've won. After she left, Elena let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. Is it really over? Lily asked. Adrian looked at Elena. She looked back. The worst of it, he said. But there's still work to do, still people who won't accept us, still challenges ahead. But we'll face them together, Elena added. Lily grinned. All three of us? All three of us, they said in unison. The child threw her arms around both of them, and for a moment they stood there, an unlikely family forged in fire and scandal and love. When Lily finally went inside to prepare for bed, Adrian and Elena lingered on the terrace. So, he said, courtship, chaperones, doing this properly. Sounds terribly boring. Probably, but necessary. He smiled. Though I reserve the right to occasionally forget propriety when no one's watching. I'd be disappointed if you didn't. They stood close but not touching, the space between them electric. Thank you, Adrian said quietly, for not giving up on us, on me, on this impossible situation. Thank you for letting me try. Above them, stars were emerging. Inside, lights blazed warm against the darkness. Blackmore Hall, once a tomb of grief and silence, was alive again. And standing there with the man she loved and the child they'd both fought to save, Elena finally understood what home felt like. Not a place, not walls and floors and roofs, but people, connection. Love fierce enough to weather any storm. They'd won. Not completely, not permanently. There would be more challenges, more judgment, more battles to fight. But they'd proven something today. That courage could triumph over cruelty, that love could melt even the coldest heart, that a disgraced governess and a grieving duke and a traumatized child could build something beautiful from broken pieces. It wasn't the ending, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. And for now, that was enough. The months that followed the garden party were not easy. Elena had been naive to think one successful afternoon would silence every critic or erase every doubt. Society's memory was long and its forgiveness conditional. But something fundamental had shifted. The invitations started arriving within days. Dinner parties, afternoon teas, social gatherings that would have been unthinkable weeks before. Some were genuine, people who'd witnessed the transformation at Blackmore Hall and wanted to be part of it. Others were opportunistic, society vultures curious about the scandal, hoping for fresh gossip. Elena learned to tell the difference. Adrian courted her properly, as promised. Chaperoned walks in the garden, supervised visits to the village, dinners with Lily always present, her bright chatter filling any awkward silence. It was maddeningly proper, and secretly thrilling, because beneath the propriety, something deeper was growing. Conversations that stretched late into evening, shared glances across crowded rooms, moments when their hands would brush and the world would narrow to just that point of contact. Lily watched it all with the knowing eyes of a child who understood more than adults gave her credit for. "When are you going to marry Miss Elena?" she asked Adrian one morning at breakfast, her tone suggesting this was a perfectly reasonable question. Adrian choked on his coffee. "Lily, what? Everyone knows you're going to. Lady Ashford told me it's just a matter of time. She said you're being insufferably proper about it, but that's probably for the best given the circumstances." Elena bit back a laugh. "Lady Ashford says a great many things, but she's right, isn't she?" Lily looked between them with those two perceptive eyes. "You love each other. I'm not stupid." "We never said you were stupid, sweetheart." Adrian set down his cup carefully. "But these things take time. There are considerations." "Like what?" "Like making sure people understand this isn't some impulsive scandal, that we're serious, that Miss Elena's reputation is protected." Lily rolled her eyes, an expression she'd picked up from the servants and deployed with devastating effect. "Her reputation was already ruined. That's why she came here in the first place. And you helped fix it by standing up for her. So now you should marry her before someone else tries to." "Someone else?" Elena raised an eyebrow. "Lord Harrington's son keeps asking about you. I heard him tell Papa you were remarkably accomplished for a governess. Like being a governess means you're supposed to be boring." Adrian's expression darkened. "When did he say this?" "Last week, at the Sterling's dinner. I was supposed to be in the nursery, but I was listening from the stairs." She said this without shame. "He also said you were lucky to have found someone so accommodating." "That's—" Adrian's jaw clenched. "I'll be having words with young Harrington." "Or," Elena said calmly, "you could ignore it. People will always talk. We can't fight every battle." "We can fight this one." The protectiveness in his voice made Elena's heart skip, but she kept her tone light. "Lily, your father and I will marry when the time is right, not before. And certainly not because some pompous boy made inappropriate comments." "But you will marry him?" Elena looked at Adrian. He looked back. Something passed between them. "Yes," Elena said softly. "When he asks, I will." Lily beamed. "Good. Can I help pick the dress?" The normalcy of it all was startling. A child asking about wedding dresses, morning breakfast conversations, worrying about what society thought for reasons other than survival. This was what healing looked like. But the past wasn't finished with them yet. 3 months after the garden party, a letter arrived. Official. Sealed with legal wax. Adrian opened it in his study with Elena present. His face went carefully blank as he read. "What is it?" she asked. "Mrs. Pembroke. She's filed a formal complaint with the Board of Educational Standards, claiming I've created an immoral household environment and that Lily should be removed for her own protection." Elena's blood went cold. She can't still do this. Everyone at the garden party saw. But the board answers to different authorities, church officials, legal representatives, people who care more about rules than reality. He set the letter down. "There's going to be a formal inquiry. They want to interview Lily, separately, without us present." "Absolutely not. We don't have a choice. If we refuse, they'll assume we're hiding something." "But she's barely 7 years old. They can't interrogate a child." "They can, and they will." Adrian's voice was tight. "This is Mrs. Pembroke's last play. If she can't destroy us socially, she'll try legally. And she knows exactly which pressure points to hit." Elena felt rage building. "So we fight, again. We show them what we showed everyone else." "It's not that simple. These people don't care about transformation or progress. They care about protocol. And technically, I did hire a governess with no references. I did allow unconventional methods. I did develop feelings for an employee." He looked at her. On paper, Mrs. Pembroke has a case. Then we make the paper irrelevant. We show them Lily. We show them what actually matters. And if they don't care? Elena's voice was steel. Then we make them care. The inquiry was scheduled for 2 weeks later. In that time, Elena and Adrian prepared like they were going to war. They documented everything: Lily's progress in her studies, her improved health, testimonials from servants, from Lady Ashford, from Reverend Collins, medical records showing weight gain, better sleep, fewer nightmares. They built a case that was irrefutable on paper. But Elena knew papers didn't always matter when people had already made up their minds. The night before the inquiry, Elena couldn't sleep. She paced her room, larger now, relocated to the second floor in a deliberate show that she was more than just hired help, and tried to calm her racing thoughts. A soft knock interrupted her spiral. Adrian stood in the doorway. Improper, scandalous. She should send him away. She didn't. "Can't sleep either?" he asked. "Too many thoughts." "May I come in?" Elena hesitated, then stepped aside. He entered, closed the door behind him. They stood in the dim lamplight, awareness crackling between them. "We're going to lose her," Elena whispered. "Aren't we?" "I don't know. Maybe. Probably." His voice was raw. "But not without a fight. Never without a fight. I can't—" Her voice broke. "I can't watch them take her, Adrian. I can't watch her face when she realizes that all our promises about being safe, about being loved, about nothing bad happening, that they were all lies. They weren't lies, we believed them. But we were wrong." Tears spilled over. "And she'll pay for our arrogance." Adrian crossed to her, pulled her into his arms. Proper be damned. Elena collapsed against him, letting the fear and grief pour out. His arms tightened around her. "Listen to me," he said fiercely. "Whatever happens tomorrow, Lily knows she's loved. She knows we fought for her. She knows she matters. That's not nothing. That's everything. But if they take her, then we get her back. We appeal. We fight in courts. We make so much noise that they have no choice but to return her. And in the meantime, we make sure she knows we're coming for her, that we haven't given up, that we never will." Elena pulled back, looked up at him. "You really believe that?" "I have to, because the alternative is unthinkable." They stood there, holding each other, drawing strength from shared desperation. Then Adrian did something that shocked her. He kissed her forehead, gentle, reverent. "I love you," he said quietly. "Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever comes after, that doesn't change. I love you too." "Good. Remember that when this gets ugly." He left before she could respond, before either of them could make the situation more complicated than it already was. Elena stood alone in her room, fingers pressed to her forehead where his lips had been, and prayed to anyone listening that tomorrow wouldn't destroy them all. The inquiry was held in the county courthouse, a deliberately intimidating venue. The board consisted of 5 men, all older, all stern, all looking at Elena like she was a problem to be solved. Mrs. Pembroke sat in the gallery, her face serene, confident in her impending victory. Adrian sat beside Elena at the defendant's table. His hand found hers under the table, squeezed once. They called Lily first. Elena's heart nearly stopped. "You said she'd be interviewed separately, not first." The lead investigator, a thin man named Ashton with cold eyes, barely glanced at her. "We determine order of proceedings. Bring in the child." Lily entered, small and pale, in a simple white dress. Her eyes found Elena's immediately. Elena tried to smile, tried to look reassuring, but terror must have shown on her face because Lily's chin wobbled. "Sit, child," Ashton said, gesturing to a chair positioned to face the board. Lily sat, hands folded, back straight, every inch the perfect student she'd been trained to be months ago. "No," Elena thought, "don't retreat, don't hide. Be brave." As if hearing her thoughts, Lily straightened her shoulders. "State your name for the record," Ashton said. "Lily Margaret Blackmore." "And how old are you, Lily?" 7, just turned 7 last month." "Do you know why you're here today?" Lily's voice was steady. "Because Mrs. Pembroke told lies about Miss Elena and Papa, and you're trying to figure out if they're true." Ashton's eyebrows rose. "That's quite an opinion for a child." "It's not an opinion. It's what happened. Mrs. Pembroke said bad things. They weren't true, but some people believed her anyway. And what makes you so certain they weren't true? Because I was there. I saw everything. And I'm not stupid just because I'm 7. A ripple went through the gallery. Ashton looked taken aback. No one suggested you were stupid, child. But you're young. Perhaps you don't understand. I understand that before Miss Elena came, I was sad all the time. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I didn't smile. I just sat in the schoolroom doing lessons and waiting to die like Mama did. The bluntness of it shocked the room into silence. And after Miss Elena came, Ashton asked carefully, I learned that being sad was okay, that missing Mama didn't make me weak, that crying was normal, that Papa still loved me even though he was sad too. Lily's voice gained strength. I learned French through games. I learned mathematics by counting stones at the pond. I learned music by playing songs that made me feel things instead of just exercises. And I learned that I was worth fighting for, that I mattered. But Miss Whitlock allowed you to play with toys, to deviate from the established curriculum, to engage in emotional displays. She let me be a child, which is what I am, a child. Not a little adult, not a problem to fix, just a person who needed someone to care. Ashton shuffled his papers. Mrs. Pembroke alleges that Miss Whitlock's methods were inappropriate, that she encouraged dependence and emotional instability. Mrs. Pembroke hurt me. Lily's voice was flat. She grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. She called me disturbed. She told me I was broken and needed to be fixed. Miss Elena never did any of those things. She was kind and patient, and she made me want to get better instead of just pretending I already was. And your father? His relationship with Miss Whitlock? Elena's stomach clenched. Lily looked directly at her, then at Adrian, then back at the board. Papa loves Miss Elena, and she loves him. And I think that's good. I think it's good that Papa smiles again, that he reads to me at night, that he talks about Mama without looking like he wants to die. Miss Elena did that. She helped him remember how to be alive. But surely you understand the impropriety. I understand that adults make everything complicated, that they'd rather follow rules than be happy, that they think love is something shameful if it doesn't happen the right way. Lily stood up, even though no one had dismissed her. But I also understand that my family is better now than it was before, that we laugh and talk and eat meals together, that the house doesn't feel like a tomb anymore. And if you take that away because it doesn't fit your rules, then you're the ones who are wrong, not us. The silence that followed was absolute. Ashton cleared his throat. You may step down, child. Lily walked back to the gallery, but instead of sitting in the designated area, she came to Elena. Elena pulled her close, holding tight, not caring what anyone thought. I was brave, Lily whispered. You were perfect, Elena whispered back. The board called Adrian next. He testified with cold precision, laid out every fact, every piece of evidence, every documented improvement in Lily's health and education. But when Ashton asked about his relationship with Elena, Adrian's composure cracked. Miss Whitlock is the best thing that's happened to this household in 3 years. She gave me back my daughter. She made me remember what it was like to feel something other than grief and guilt. And yes, I love her. I intend to marry her. And I will not apologize for that to you or anyone else. Your Grace, surely you understand that pursuing a romantic relationship with an employee creates an inappropriate power dynamic. The only inappropriate dynamic was the one I created when I tried to turn my daughter into an emotionless automaton because I couldn't handle my own pain. Miss Whitlock fixed that. She fixed me. And if this board decides that's somehow wrong, then your priorities are severely misaligned. Ashton's face reddened. We are here to determine what's best for the child. Then look at the child. Look at the evidence. Stop hiding behind protocol and actually see what's in front of you. Adrian's voice shook with barely controlled fury. My daughter was dying inside. Miss Whitlock saved her. That's what matters. Not my title, not her background, not your arbitrary rules about what's proper. Her life. That's what's at stake here. The outburst hung in the air. Then Elena stood. May I speak? Ashton looked like he wanted to refuse, but the gallery was watching, waiting. Proceed, he said stiffly. Elena stepped forward. No notes, no prepared speech, just truth. My father was a criminal. He defrauded people and then killed himself rather than face consequences. That's my legacy. That's what I carry. Her voice was steady. But it's not who I am. I didn't choose my father's sins. I only chose how to respond to them. And I chose to try to do something good, to help someone who needed it, to give a child the second chance I never got. That's very noble, Miss Whitlock, but I'm not finished. The steel in her voice surprised even her. You want to judge me by my father's crimes, by my lack of formal credentials, by my relationship with the Duke. Fine, judge away, but also judge by my results, by the child who can laugh and eat and sleep again, by the household that functions, by the father who's actually present in his daughter's life now. She turned to face Mrs. Pembroke directly. You want to know what's inappropriate? Hurting a child to prove your methods work. Spreading lies because your pride was wounded. Using your influence to destroy people who dared to prove you wrong. That's inappropriate. What the Duke and I have done, helping a traumatized child heal, that's called compassion. And if this board can't tell the difference, then you have no business determining anyone's fate. The gallery erupted in applause. Ashton called for order, but it was chaos now. Lady Ashford stood from the gallery. If I may address the board, this is highly irregular. Then add it to the list. I am Lady Margaret Ashford. I've known Adrian Blackmore since he was a boy. I watched him marry Margaret. I watched him grieve. And I've watched him come back to life because of Miss Whitlock. She fixed Ashton with a glare that could have melted steel. I have also watched this board waste time and resources on a vendetta brought by a bitter woman with no credibility. Mrs. Pembroke's methods have been questioned by multiple families. Her cruelty is well documented. Yet you give her credence while attempting to destroy a woman whose only crime was succeeding where Mrs. Pembroke failed. Others stood. Lord Harrington, Reverend Collins, families who'd attended the garden party. One by one, they testified. Not to protocol or propriety, but to reality. To the transformation they'd witnessed. To Elena's character, to Lily's well-being. The tide turned. Ashton tried to regain control, but it was futile. The board was losing credibility with every word. Finally, after an hour of chaos, Ashton called a recess. The board will deliberate. Decision will be rendered tomorrow morning. Elena's legs nearly gave out. Adrian caught her arm. Whatever happens, he said quietly, we fight. I know. They left the courthouse surrounded by supporters. People who'd become allies, who'd become friends. But the night stretched ahead, long and uncertain. Elena couldn't eat dinner, couldn't focus on anything except the wait. Lily seemed oddly calm. We're going to win, she said with a child's certainty. How do you know? Because we're right, and they know it. They just have to admit it. Elena wished she had that kind of faith. The night dragged on. Midnight came and went. Elena dozed in fits, nightmares of Lily being dragged away jolting her awake. At dawn, a messenger arrived. The board had reached a decision. They gathered at the courthouse at 9 o'clock. The same room, the same faces, but the atmosphere was different, charged, electric. Ashton stood, papers in hand. His face was carefully neutral. The board has reviewed all testimony and evidence. We have reached the following conclusions. He paused, drawing out the moment. First, regarding the allegations of inappropriate conduct between the Duke and Miss Whitlock. While the relationship is unconventional, we find no evidence of impropriety or harm to the child. The Duke's intentions to formalize the relationship through marriage are noted and deemed acceptable. Elena's heart stuttered. Second, regarding Miss Whitlock's qualifications and methods. While unorthodox, the documented results are undeniable. The child has shown marked improvement in health, education, and emotional stability. We find no grounds to question Miss Whitlock's fitness as governess. Adrian's hand found Elena's, squeezed tight. Third, regarding the allegations brought by Mrs. Pembroke. After reviewing witness testimony, we find her complaints to be without merit and motivated by personal grievance rather than genuine concern for the child's welfare. Mrs. Pembroke went pale. Therefore, the board finds no cause to remove Lily Blackmore from her father's care. Furthermore, we recommend that Mrs. Pembroke's credentials be reviewed by the appropriate authorities given the documented concerns about her methods. The gallery erupted. Elena couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just felt Adrian's arms around her, Lily crashing into both of them, the weight of months of fear finally lifting. They'd won. Actually won. The celebration that followed was overwhelming. People congratulating them, shaking hands, offering support, but all Elena could focus on was Lily's face. The pure joy there. The relief. "I told you we'd win," the child said smugly. "You did. I should have believed you." "You should always believe me. I'm very smart." Elena laughed through tears. "Yes, you are." Mrs. Pembroke tried to leave quietly, but Lady Ashford intercepted her at the door. "Not so fast. You owe these people an apology." "I owe them nothing." "You owe them everything. Your lies nearly destroyed a family. The least you can do is acknowledge it." Mrs. Pembroke's face twisted. "They made a mockery of education, of proper child rearing. They loved a child more than they loved rules, and that terrified you, because it proved that everything you've built your career on is hollow." Lady Ashford's voice was cold. "You've lost, Mrs. Pembroke, your influence, your credibility, everything, and you did it to yourself." Mrs. Pembroke fled without another word. Outside, the morning sun was bright, too bright for the weight of what had just happened. Elena stood with Adrian and Lily on the courthouse steps, watching people disperse, still trying to process that it was over. "What do we do now?" she asked. Adrian smiled. "Now? We live. Finally live." The weeks that followed were strange. After months of fighting, the sudden peace felt unreal. But they adjusted. Adrian formally proposed 3 months after the inquiry. Not a grand gesture, just the two of them in the garden where they'd had their first real conversation. "Elena Whitlock, will you marry me?" "Yes." Obviously, yes. He slipped a ring on her finger, sapphire, because she'd mentioned once that it was her mother's favorite stone, and kissed her properly for the first time. It was worth the wait. They married in the spring, small ceremony, close friends, Lily as the flower girl, beaming with pride. When the priest asked if anyone objected, Lily stage whispered, "If anyone says anything, I'll fight them." The congregation laughed. Elena cried. Adrian looked happier than she'd ever seen him, and when they exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish and fight for each other through whatever came next, Elena felt something slot into place. This was home, this strange, unconventional family they'd built from broken pieces. The years that followed weren't perfect. There were still whispers, still people who looked down on the fallen woman who'd married a duke. Still challenges and setbacks and moments of doubt, but they faced them together. Lily grew into a remarkable young woman, sharp, confident, compassionate. She studied music seriously, eventually performing in London to great acclaim. She never forgot what it felt like to be broken, and she used that empathy to help other children who were struggling. She became exactly the kind of strong woman Margaret would have been proud of. More children came. A boy first, then another girl. The house that had been a tomb filled with noise and laughter and life. Adrian transformed completely. The cold, controlled Duke became a father who wrestled with his children, who told terrible jokes, who wasn't afraid to cry when he was moved. He and Elena built something neither of them had imagined possible. A partnership based on mutual respect and shared struggle and love that had been forged in fire. They established a school on the estate. Free education for local children, using the methods Elena had developed with Lily. Other governesses came to study. The work spread. What had started as one desperate woman trying to save one damaged child became a movement. It wasn't perfect. Some students struggled, some families resisted. Progress was slower than Elena wanted, but it was real. And it mattered. 10 years after that first rainy day when Elena had arrived with nothing but desperation and pride, she stood in the same gardens where the battle had been won. The fountain ran clear. Flowers bloomed everywhere. Children played on the lawn. Hers and Lily's students and visiting friends all mixed together in joyful chaos. Adrian found her there, slipped his arms around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" "How impossible this all seemed. How sure I was that I'd fail." "But you didn't." "We didn't. There's a difference." Kissed her temple. "I love you, in case I haven't mentioned it today." "You mentioned it twice at breakfast and once when you brought me tea this afternoon." Well, now it's 3 times in the afternoon. I'm very thorough. Elena laughed, leaning back against him, watching their children play. Lily emerged from the house, now 18 and impossibly poised. She'd been in London for the season but had come home early, claiming city life was exhausting. Mama, Papa, come see what I brought back. Mama. Elena had been Mama for 8 years now, but it still made her chest tight every time. They walked over to find Lily holding a portfolio. I've been asked to teach at the Royal Academy. Music education for underprivileged children. They want to use our methods from the school here. They said... She paused, emotion making her voice shake. They said what you did for me could help hundreds of other children, that our story mattered. Elena's eyes burned. Lily, that's incredible. I know, and I want to do it. But I wanted to ask you first. Make sure it's okay to share our story. To talk about what happened. Elena looked at Adrian. He nodded. It's your story too, Elena said softly. You get to decide how to tell it. Then I want to tell it honestly. All of it. The pain and the healing and the fight, because maybe someone out there needs to hear that broken things can be fixed, that families come in all shapes, that love matters more than rules. That's perfect, Adrian said, his voice rough. His voice... They stood together, the family that shouldn't have existed but did, that had survived scandal and judgment and their own mistakes to build something beautiful. That night, after the children were in bed, Elena and Adrian sat in his study, their study now, redesigned to accommodate 2 people who shared everything. Do you ever regret it? He asked. Taking that position all those years ago? Coming to this cold house to teach a damaged child? Elena thought about it. About the girl she'd been, desperate, broken, carrying her father's shame like a weight. About the woman she'd become, strong, loved, mother to 4 and teacher to dozens. Not for a second. Coming here saved my life. You saved mine first. Then we're even. Adrian pulled her close. No, we're not even. We never will be. Because what you gave me, what you gave Lily, is beyond measure, beyond repayment. Then don't repay it. Just love me. That's enough. For the rest of my life. They sat in comfortable silence, the house settling around them. Outside, the world kept turning. People still judged, still gossiped, still thought Elena Whitlock, now Elena Blackmore, Duchess of Thornfield, was too bold, too unconventional, too much. Let them think it. She'd learned long ago that other people's opinions couldn't define her worth. Only her actions could do that, and she'd chosen to act with courage, with compassion, with love fierce enough to transform everything it touched. She'd chosen to fight for a child who needed her, for a man who'd forgotten how to feel, for herself, when no one else would. And in doing so, she'd built a legacy that would outlast any scandal. Years later, when Lily published her memoir about childhood trauma and healing through compassion, it became required reading in education circles. When the school on Blackmore Estate expanded to 5 counties, changing hundreds of lives. When Elena's methods were adopted nationwide, revolutionizing how traumatized children were taught. When Adrian endowed chairs of education in Margaret's name and Elena's, ensuring their work would continue long after they were gone. That's when people finally understood. This wasn't just a love story, though it was that too. This was a revolution, quiet, persistent, transformative. It started with one desperate woman refusing to accept that a child was beyond saving. It grew into something that changed the world, not overnight, not perfectly, but real. Elena Blackmore died at 73, surrounded by children and grandchildren and students who'd become like family. Adrian followed 6 months later, his heart apparently deciding it couldn't function without hers. They were buried side by side in the Blackmore family plot, their headstones simple. Elena Blackmore, teacher, mother, fighter of battles worth fighting. Adrian Blackmore, husband, father, man who learned that love conquers cold. The estate continued, the school flourished, the legacy lived on. And somewhere, 2 souls who'd found each other in the darkest moment rested together, knowing they'd done something that mattered. They'd proven that courage could triumph over cruelty, that broken things could heal if given enough care, that love, real, messy, imperfect love, was worth every risk. They'd taken a house of silence and filled it with life. They'd taken a damaged child and helped her become whole. They'd taken two broken people and built something beautiful. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. It was everything.